Two attractive women were dining on the restaurant's terrace, catching the eyes of passing men, but they were engrossed in conversation and paid them no mind. "How long has it been?" Melanie inquired of her tall, dark-haired companion. "Feels like ages since I last saw you." The other woman, a blonde, a couple of years younger, replied, "I know, Mel. I've been swamped with grad school and family stuff. Hardly had time for anything else." "How's business school treating you? You must be close to snagging that MBA." "Yeah, almost there. Spring break's next week, then just a few more weeks till graduation. Thesis is turned in, so no worries there. Plus, looks like I'm skipping all exams." "Smooth sailing ahead then." "Fantastic, Mel. Thanks. Got a job lined up yet?" "Nah, thinking of taking a breather after the craziness of the last 2 years. Want to unwind a bit before diving into the workforce. But enough about me. How about you? Any special man in your life?" "Doing okay. Still on the hunt for Mr. Right." The blonde gave her brunette friend an assessing look. "With your looks, you could have a date every night if you wanted." Melanie smirked. "Trust me, living the single life isn't all it's cracked up to be nowadays. Wading through a sea of idiots just to find one decent guy gets old fast. I envy you, though. Happily married to a great guy like Adam. Speaking of whom, how's your dashing husband doing?" "He's all right, I suppose. Wait, did I just hear a hint of discontent? What's up, Mel? Things not all rosy in your world?" The blonde shook her head. "Not exactly trouble, just Adam's been swamped with work lately. Hardly any time for us, and when we do, our entertainment budget's tighter than ever. Well, he dedicates all his time to building his company for both of you, and grad school, well, it's probably not cheap." "I get it, and I'm grateful, but sometimes I just miss the carefree fun of school. Everyone talks about parties and bar meetups, and here I am, stuck at home watching TV reruns." Her dark-haired friend gave her a knowing look. Any specific person at school you're itching to party with?" Melanie chuckled. "You always see right through me." Leaning in to avoid being overheard, she confessed, "Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really sweet." She blushed. "And he's definitely into me. Whenever we're together, he always compliments how good I look and how well I'm doing in school." Gary shook her head. "I don't think Adam would be thrilled about this." "It's just innocent flirting, nothing serious. But you're right. Adam wouldn't approve. That's why I won't tell him." She shifted uncomfortably. "But I can't help but miss the freedom of my single days. It was so exciting, meeting different guys. I miss it. Be careful, okay? You got a great husband. Don't risk losing him. Adam won't take kindly to any fooling around. And if he ever found out, plenty of women would be lining up to console him." I know. I want to spend my life with him, start a family. I just wanted a bit of fun before things got too serious." Lowering her voice, she leaned closer again. "Speaking of Carl, he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could guarantee Adam wouldn't find out, I'd consider it." She laughed it off. "But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen." Jerry sat down, contemplating Melanie for a moment. Finally, she nodded, as if she had a plan. "Don't be so sure. I've got an idea how you could pull it off." Melanie sighed, a mix of disbelief and excitement. "Are you serious? You'd risk your marriage for a fling? If I could be certain Adam wouldn't know, maybe. But you're just teasing me, Gary. There's no way I could get away with it." "Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward." Jerry began to outline each step with her fingers. "First, you make a new Gmail account under a fake name like Good Friend. Then, you use it to send Adam an anonymous message, warning him about his wife's supposed affair." "Wait, do I admit to having an affair? This sounds insane." "Why would you do that?" Jerry kept her tone even. "More like you'd suggest Melanie's cheating with someone Adam doesn't know and can't easily check. And what's the point? It'll just make Adam suspicious of me." "Exactly. But when he can't find the mystery guy, he'll have to confront you, demanding answers." "But I don't want him to doubt me." "No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you act furious, accusing him of mistrust. You'll be so upset that you'll want to break from the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida?" Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden turn. "Yes. Why? Oh, I see." "You tell Adam angrily that you're going to Florida to sort things out with your mom. Then while he's here, frantically searching for the phantom lover, you're in Florida with Carl, having your own little fling." "How do I explain this to my mom?" Jerry rolled her eyes. "You don't. In fact, you don't even see her while you're there." "But what if Adam calls her? Tell him not to. Make it clear you need space to sort things out. Warn him not to contact you or your mom while you're away. Tell him if he does, you might not come back." Melanie pondered her friend's plan for a moment, then her face lit up. You know, Gary, I can see this working. But what about when I come back? It's easy. By then, Adam will miss you like crazy. And since he can't find the mystery man, he'll realize it's all a hoax. He'll feel guilty and beg for forgiveness. You'll forgive him, and things will be back to normal. You'll have some fun, and you and Adam will be closer than ever. What about the supposed guy I'm supposed to be seeing? Maybe I should just make up a name for him. You could, but it'll be more believable if he's real. Pick someone totally off limits, like an old guy or someone far away or even deceased. That way, if Adam tries to find him, you're in the clear. Hey, I think I've got it. There was this creepy professor back in my first year of grad school. He must have vanished because I never saw him again. How does that sound? Perfect. Melanie reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. You're amazing, Jerry. I'm so pumped. I really think this is going to work. She hugged herself, trembling with anticipation. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam returned to his office, sinking into his worn swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead, anxiety clouding his thoughts. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam pondered a backup plan. His email chimed and he eagerly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But the subject line regarding his wife nearly made him delete the message. Curiosity won and he opened it. I'm sorry to say, but Melanie's involved with Professor Bellingham. Thought you should know, friend. What in the world? Stunned, Adam read the message again, struggling to believe it. This can't be right. Melanie wouldn't do this. Someone's trying to stir up trouble. But who and why? He almost deleted it, but paused. I can't ignore this. It's probably a mistake, but I have to know. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why make such an accusation? What evidence do you have? He fired off the message, staring at the screen in frustration. This won't get me anywhere. No way to trace this person or when they'll reply. I need to find out about this Bellingham. He scoured the university's site, but found no mention of the professor. Frustrated, he widened his search to other schools nearby, but came up empty-handed. This is maddening, he muttered, feeling powerless. Did my buddy just invent a name? He Googled it, but the results included 2 females, none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's pulling a prank or trying to drive me nuts. Yet I couldn't bring myself to delete the letter. Now that it's sent, doubt gnawed at him. What if she's cheating? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean much. I've been swamped at work, barely spending time with her. Maybe she's upset because I've been neglecting her. I remember turning down her fun ideas sometimes. But dang, I'm putting in nearly 70 hours a week for the business. Doesn't she get it? Can't she see it's for us? And we can't afford extravagance. Her tuition's skyrocketing, and I'm pouring money into the business. Yet maybe I neglected her. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar, finding no recent meetups. Damn. But guilt turned to anger. I may not have given Melanie all she wanted, but that doesn't justify cheating. We discussed sacrifices for the business. She agreed then, so she can't complain now. His thoughts were interrupted by the foreman's arrival. Hey, Adam, great news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. All right, we need to unpack them and get them to the workshop ASAP. After the foreman left, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at least one crisis is avoided. He smirked. Guess I can devote more time to my wife. After more futile internet searching, he leaned back, contemplating. If Mel's really having an affair, it must be someone from the university. Maybe my buddy got the name wrong. Or perhaps the university didn't list him. He found the HR phone number. When the secretary answered, he inquired about Professor Bellingham. Which department? I think it's the business school, but not sure. After a pause, she apologized. No Bellingham in the business school, other departments? Another sigh. Please hold. This time the wait was longer. When she returned, her tone was curt. No Professor Bellingham here? A thought struck him. Maybe he left a year or 2 ago. I can only confirm current staff. Why? University policy, sir. Anything else? No, you tried, he said, holding back sarcasm. He tried the business school dean, but got nowhere. By now, his head throbbed. Need a drink, he muttered, hanging up. Then he called Gary. Hey, can we meet at Macy's after work? I need advice. No, can't talk about it now. Okay, see you at 6. At Macy's, Adam found Gary at a quiet table with wine and beer. He kissed him on the cheek. Thanks for the beer and, more importantly, for coming. As they sat, Gary studied him. All right, Adam, spill. Business trouble? Unsure where to start, Adam hesitated. Do you know a Professor Bellingham? Gary shook her head. Bellingham? Never heard of him. He sighed and handed her a printout of the email. I got this today, he said. She swiftly perused it, sighed, then read it again. Poor Adam, she said sympathetically. No wonder you didn't want to discuss it over the phone. What are your thoughts? I'm torn, Jerry, he replied. Can't fathom it's true, but can't ignore it either. I spent the day trying to find this elusive Bellingham at the university, but hit a dead end. Now I'm lost. Can't afford a detective, no time for sleuthing. That's why I turned to you. You've been a steadfast friend to Melanie and me. What's your take? She took another sip of wine, then gave his hand a quick squeeze. Essentially, you're asking if I think she's having an affair. I can't provide absolute certainty. On one hand, I haven't noticed anything to suggest she's unfaithful. On the other hand, I haven't seen much of her lately. His annoyance flashed, and she hastened to continue. You're aware that some people thrive on stirring trouble, or perhaps you have business rivals who seek to distract. There may be other possibilities I haven't considered. What's clear is you can't ignore it and hope it vanishes. I know how strongly you value marital fidelity, and any suggestion of a rift in your marriage will gnaw at you. If left unaddressed, doubt will corrode your relationship with Melanie as effectively as infidelity, she said. I understand your dilemma, Gary, but what's the solution? I believe you should show this to Melanie. She deserves to know she's been accused of infidelity and should have the chance to explain. After all, Adam, if someone accused you, wouldn't you want to know? He sat silently, then nodded. You're right. Keeping this from Melanie will affect our relationship. Ultimately, it could drive us apart as surely as if she had truly betrayed me, he said. He rose and embraced her. Thanks for helping me sort through this, Gary. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean the world to me. Adam, if there's anything I can do, just say the word. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door as she watched him go. When he arrived home, Melanie was already there, waiting for him. Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call you, but you didn't answer, she questioned. Ignoring her query, he grabbed her hand and guided her to the couch, sitting next to her. I need to show you something, Mel. Something that's really confused me, he explained. As she sat down next to him, she appeared anxious while he handed her the printout. I received this email today. Can you make sense of it? She quickly read it, then, to his shock, she stood up and began shouting. Do you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You hear one accusation from someone anonymous and suddenly I'm accused of cheating? No, darling, I'm not blaming you for anything. If you're not blaming me, then why did you show me this nonsense? She grabbed the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. You might as well stab me in the heart. This deeply wounds me. You trust someone too scared to even sign their name over me, your wife, she declared, grabbing her bag and heading toward the door. I can't even face you right now. I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll return. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Oh, damn, I didn't see this coming. Now things are even worse, he moaned, sinking back into the couch and burying his face in his hands. As he sat there, Adam's initial thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me explain. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I just showed her what someone else claimed, that's all. But he realized the truth before he finished. If Mel had shown me that note, I probably would have lost it too. But what could I do? Pretend everything was okay? Jerry was right. I can't just dismiss the letter. It wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Even though he spent the rest of the night pondering the issue, he was no closer to deciding what to do than when he began. He knew he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide what to say to her. All he knew for certain was that he wanted to bring his wife home to try to repair the relationship. Emotionally drained, Adam was determined to stay awake until Melanie returned. However, after another hour of waiting, exhaustion overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Sometime past midnight, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. As he stood up, Melanie entered the living room and fixed him with a stern look, hands on her hips. Mel, we really need... She cut him off sharply. I don't want to talk about this now, she said, her tone final. You can spend the night on the couch, and we'll discuss it in the morning. Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched down the hallway to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam shut, he groaned and settled back on the couch, hoping sleep would claim him again. It took a while. Adam usually rose early for work, but he felt compelled to wait until Melanie appeared so they could talk. Brewing coffee, he sat at his laptop, skimming the news. Nearly 8 o'clock, Melanie entered the kitchen, dragging a suitcase behind her, shocking Adam. Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were... She raised her hand, cutting him off. It's a shock, Adam. This shakes our whole marriage. I need time alone to process. Spring break starts tomorrow and I'm going to Florida to visit my mom. I'll be gone all week, returning next Monday for classes. During my absence, I don't want to hear from you. No calls to me or my mom. Got it? He nodded, feeling helpless. I'm serious, Adam. If you try to reach out, I might not come back. Understood? Another nod. Okay, she said, and left, dragging her suitcase to her car. Stunned, Adam sat for minutes before dragging himself to shave and change, then drove to work with a heavy heart. Upon arriving, good news awaited him. His foreman efficiently distributed the missing components, and testing proceeded without issue. At least the business won't crash today, Adam muttered bitterly to himself. Unlike my marriage. In the afternoon, while working on a spreadsheet, he received a call from Jerry. I was worried and wanted to know how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie? Oh, well, it's a long, sad story, he said, feeling dejected. Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Maybe we can get together to discuss this again over a drink. That would be great. Jerry, same place. Okay. Before leaving, he checked his email again, but there was still nothing from Gudfreen. At the bar, Jerry saw the dark circles under Adam's eyes right away. Adam, looks like you didn't sleep much last night. What happened? Taking a big sip from his beer, Adam talked about the fight with Melanie and her leaving. The next day, Jerry looked at him with sadness and guilt. Oh, Adam, I feel awful. You listened to me and it turned out all wrong. No, Jerry, I thought about it a lot, and I believe it was the only choice. I didn't expect Mel to react so strongly, but I couldn't hide the letter and act like nothing happened. Now I hope she'll calm down and we can talk when she's back. You say that nicely, Adam, but I still feel bad. So what's your plan for the week? I'm not sure, Jerry. If Mel and I don't talk, I don't see how we can move forward. Maybe I'll wait a bit and then call her. No, Adam, that's the last thing you should do. She already feels like you don't trust her. If you call after she told you not to, it'll prove her right. Yeah, I get it. But I feel so useless. I don't know how to find out who sent the letter. While she's away, I'll keep trying to find this Professor Bellingham. That sounds smart. Maybe he can help fill in some gaps. Over the next days, Adam kept trying to solve the letter mystery. Despite no luck, he was sure Bellingham had ties to the university. Then he had an idea. Maybe I can't find him because he's an alum, not a teacher. I'm an alum too, so maybe the alumni office can help. When Adam called and said he was a former student, he got transferred to the development department quickly. The person he talked to wrote down Adam's info and asked if he wanted to give money to the school. Adam said no. He was looking for Professor Bellingham, thinking he might be a former student. The person checked, but couldn't find anyone by that name in their records. Adam suggested maybe Bellingham didn't finish school, but the person couldn't help since their records only had graduates. Adam hung up frustrated, thinking he just guaranteed he'd be asked for money later. The next day, Adam went to the business school during spring break to look for Bellingham. Even though it was break, he asked around, but eventually got asked to leave by the assistant dean. Back at his office, feeling defeated, Adam wondered what to do next. Then his phone rang. It was Dr. Avery Mayfair from the business school faculty who heard him earlier and wanted to help. Mayfair said Bellingham used to teach part-time there, but his class got canceled because not many students enrolled. Adam thanked him. There's more, Dr. Mayfair continued. At the start of this year, Bellingham told me he got a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. Really? Adam asked, surprised. Yes, the professor confirmed. And there's something else. In the same message, he said he recently married his partner, Harold. Harold? So Bellingham. Exactly, Dr. Mayfair said. Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfair, Adam said gratefully. I still don't get why someone sent me that nasty letter, but now I know it was a lie. Can I ask why you called me? I'm grateful, but we don't know each other, the professor asked. I don't mind telling you, he continued, his tone changing. Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else, so I understand how you feel. Thankfully, this time it was just a false alarm, but if it were true, I'd have told you. Thanks, sir. I really appreciate what you did. That night, Adam called Gary to share the news. I still don't know who's trying to mess up my marriage, but I'm sure now Mel isn't with Professor Bellingham. Can you trust Dr. Mayfair? Gary asked. Definitely. I checked him out after our call. He's on the business school faculty. He seems respected and older, maybe around 60. I also looked up Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He's there too. That's good news, Adam. You must feel relieved. Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to tell Mel when she comes back. It's simple, Adam. From what you said about your argument with her, she didn't give you a chance to explain. When she returns, tell her you never doubted her. Say you knew about Bellingham and found him as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted strongly, you couldn't tell her. If you handle it right, she'll apologize to you. I'm not sure, Jerry. Things weren't exactly like that, Adam said uncertainly. Gary heard a smile in his voice. Come on, Adam. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a bit to get what you want? Before leaving town on Sunday, Melanie called Gary. Hey, I just wanted to check on Adam before I come home. I'm nervous about what I'll find. You owe me big for helping you while you were wrapped up in your affair. With some luck and my help, you'll reconcile with Adam, and your marriage will be better, Gary assured her. Melanie told him about her week, ending with Adam finding Bellingham. If you handle it right, Adam will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will be normal again. There was silence. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? Gary was confused. What do you mean? Just last week you had an epiphany. Carl, the guy you're with, makes you laugh, and he's great in bed. You haven't felt this happy in years. You want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Come on, Gary, you have to help me figure out a way to make this work. Hold on, Melanie. You're already taking a big risk by going off with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're really pushing your luck, girl. Maybe, but you've got to admit your little scheme worked like a charm. I bet you can come up with a plan for me to do it again. Come on, Jerry, please. This guy is really something. I was afraid something like this might happen. There was a prolonged silence. Okay, Jerry said slowly. I can come up with a plan to get what you want. But you need to understand, you're putting your marriage to Adam at risk. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's dedicated, faithful, and a real family man. Men like him don't come around every day. Are you sure you want to gamble it all for a bit of excitement in the bedroom? Melanie chuckled. You get me going with, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now, here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up? Of course. You told me to keep it active. Good, because you need to send another letter from your supposed good friend. But this time, send it to yourself, to your regular email. Okay, but what should the new letter say? It's the same as the last one, but this time you'll write that Adam is having an affair with me. What? But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does this help? It's simple. The first letter accused you of infidelity. Adam found out you couldn't have cheated with Professor Bellingham, but he might still have doubts about your fidelity. Wait, Gary, didn't you say a letter about Bellingham would give me leeway with Carl? That's right. But after he gets the second letter, he won't have doubts. He already knows you weren't involved with Bellingham, and he's sure he's not having an affair with me. Clearly, the so-called good friend is a liar, so Adam won't doubt you anymore. This means you can get away with almost anything without raising Adam's suspicions. There was silence on the line. Melanie then exclaimed, Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with this, but you just gave me a pass I can use for the rest of the semester. There are 2 more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter. Okay, but why? Because then I can reinforce that you're trustworthy and this mystery friend isn't. Ah, got it. He respects your opinion, so he'll listen to your advice. What else? After you send the message to yourself, remember to log out of your good friend email account. What if Adam stumbles upon it? Oh no. Actually, you should probably sign out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl, right? I've warned Carl never to email me, but that's still smart advice. Better safe than sorry. Returning home from work that evening, Adam was alarmed to find Melanie in tears. What's wrong, Mel? What happened? He asked, rushing to her. Oh, Adam, it's happening again, she said, tears in her eyes, handing him a copy of the letter. Damn it, he swore after reading the accusatory message. You know that's not true, right? Of course. I know you'd never cheat on me, just as I'd never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Gary. She's such a good friend to both of us that she'd never do anything like that. Damn it. Someone's still trying to stir up trouble for us, and I have no idea who or why. There must be a way to trace these things. She looked up at him hesitantly. Are you going to tell Jerry about this? Do you think I should? I believe you should. Whether you like it or not, she's now involved. It wouldn't be fair to her if you didn't inform her about this. The next morning, when Adam called, Gary answered cheerfully. Well, how are the lovebirds today? Adam's tone was serious. We're okay, Jerry, but there's something new I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work? I actually plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over? Sure, great. I'll stop by between 6:30 and 7. When Adam arrived at her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed his solemn expression. What's wrong, Adam? I've been worried since you called. He shook his head. I'm really sorry, Gary, but it seems you're now involved in this situation with Melanie and me. Confused, she looked at him. He handed her a copy of the latest letter. After reading it, she looked at Adam in despair. But this is absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that. He nodded. She does. In fact, she said the same thing to me. Gary shook her head, puzzled. That's a relief to hear. But what do you think all this means? I think someone is determined to cause trouble between Melanie and me. First, a warning about the professor, now this. The only explanation I can think of is that I have an enemy, perhaps a business rival, but I have no idea who it could be. Anyway, since you're now involved, Mel and I decided you should be informed. I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so considerate, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. Unless this mystery person does something obvious or slips up, involving the police might not help. I agree, Jerry, but it's frustrating. I'm tired of all this confusion, and I just want whoever it is to leave us alone. How is Melanie taking this? She's very upset. She was in tears when I got home. I'm not surprised, especially after the first ordeal. Look, Adam, I think Melanie is pretty fragile right now. With all of this and nearing graduation, she's probably on edge. You need to take care of her as much as possible. Do you think we should block all emails from this account? That might be a mistake. If they send anything else, you'll want to know. You're right. But how can I protect Mel? Well, if you receive another letter, I wouldn't tell her immediately, if at all. You could monitor her email on your laptop whenever possible. If another letter comes, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way, you won't have to involve her. Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. He stood up. I'm truly sorry you got pulled into all of this, but if this is meant to be an apology, then I don't need one. You mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever I can to assist. He smiled appreciatively. I should head home now to check on Melanie. Starting to leave, he paused, embraced Gary, and planted a kiss on her cheek. Thank you for being such a great friend. Your support throughout all of this means a great deal to me. Upon returning home, Adam was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in much higher spirits. The following morning, she seemed even more cheerful and rose early to have breakfast with her husband. It's a rare treat to see you before I head off to work, Adam remarked. Well, I wanted to make sure I said I love you before you left this morning, she explained, planting a kiss on him. Oh, and by the way, she continued, I wanted to mention that I'll be attending a lecture on campus this evening. A few girlfriends and I are planning to grab a bite afterwards, so I might be home late. Sure thing, Mel. Everything's all right here. We've got plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can snack on those. Thanks, honey. If we miss each other, I'll probably swing by after class to drop off my things and change clothes. Have a great evening. Aware that Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam decided to stay at the office later than usual. Business was looking up, with a potential large client expressing interest in their new product samples. Things are starting to make sense now. I just need to get to the bottom of who's behind these email games with Mel and me, he pondered. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious good friend as he walked into the house. Heading towards the bedroom, he saw Melanie's laptop on the table. She probably didn't need it for the lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Gary's suggestion. I wonder if she still checks her email. If she does, then we need to see if she's received anything new from this idiot. He opened the laptop and saw that the email page wasn't open. Clicking on the Gmail link, a window popped up asking him to choose an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out, so he started to close Gmail. But before he could, he noticed a second account named Good Friend. Shocked, he stared at it. Trying to open it, Google asked for a password. Without it, he closed the tab and slumped into his chair, trying to understand what he found. Why does she have an email with that name? Gmail doesn't allow duplicate addresses, so Melanie must have sent those letters. But why? Why would she accuse herself of an affair? Then it hit him. It was a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor while she was with someone else. Another thought came. Her trip to Florida. When I confronted her, she acted mad, saying she needed space and was visiting her mother. But did she really? Quickly, he called his mother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked, Melanie and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon? Not at all. It's been ages since I saw you. Please come whenever, she said. She Gritting his teeth, he replied, "Great, we'll be in touch." After hanging up, he cursed quietly. Melanie is so deceitful. Where did she go? And who was she with? Damn her. Then he recollected the last letter, the same one Melanie had received. What was the purpose of this, damn it? It must be another distraction while she goes to lectures with her friends. What a despicable, lying woman. Curiosity gnawed at him, prompting him to investigate what she wore when she went out. He hurried to the bedroom and sifted through his wife's underwear. Despite struggling to remember every detail about Melanie, he almost gave up. But a sudden suspicion gripped him, leading him to double-check one particular item, a garter belt. It was missing. Frustrated, he searched for a suitable bra and underwear, only to find them gone as well. Out for dinner with her friends, huh? He replaced everything and returned to the kitchen table. So be it. You enjoy sabotage and deception. Well, two can play at this game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was angry, but pretended to sleep as she entered the bedroom. He held back from confronting her when he heard the shower, sarcastically thinking, who knew lectures would be so sweaty? The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work before Melanie woke. He left a note by the coffee pot. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. I had an early meeting at work and might be late today, so don't wait up. Adam had a busy day, but not with work meetings. He did errands at lunch and came home with some purchases to get ready. Then he had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Later, he went out for dinner and a movie. Melanie was asleep when he got back to bed, trying not to disturb her. But when she woke up, Adam was waiting. I thought you left for work already, she said, taking the coffee he gave her. I wanted to see you before I leave. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's rare. When will you be back? Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if things go well. Can you manage while I'm gone? She smiled. I'll be fine. I'll keep busy. Good. Just stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face fell. That's not funny, Adam. Sorry, you're right. It's not. He waved and left for the car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. She's probably making plans to meet her lover. I just need a diversion to keep her here instead of going to the airport. At lunchtime, Adam left his office and made his way to the off-campus parking lot of the university. He briskly walked toward the Graduate School of Business, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder. Without attracting attention, he headed to the reading room of the business school library. The few students present paid him no mind as he casually strolled behind the periodicals rack. Once out of sight, he produced a string of hefty firecrackers, lit the extra-long fuse, and tossed them into a metal disposal container. He casually strolled to the nearest door, using his backpack to prop it open, then exited. Outside, he retrieved the phone he'd bought the previous day and dialed campus security. Quick, come over! There's firing at the business school, he exclaimed when they answered. I think there might be multiple shooters. It's ongoing. Pointing the phone towards the library, he triggered a series of fireworks seconds later. After disconnecting, he hurried across campus to his car amid blaring sirens and frantic people scattering in all directions. From his neighborhood vantage point, he watched an hour later as his wife's car pulled into their driveway, followed by another vehicle with a male figure stepping out. In times of danger, there's no place like home, Adam muttered with a bittersweet grin before driving to the motel where he'd booked a room. Later that night, he circled his neighborhood to ensure the second car remained parked in his driveway, then returned to his room to attempt sleep. The next morning, when the adulterous pair exited the house, they were shocked to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. God, Carl, that's my husband, Melanie gasped upon recognizing him. I thought you were in Detroit, she stammered, then caught herself. Dear, things aren't as they seem. Carl just stopped by for a visit. Melanie, every time you speak, it's just lies. I don't want to hear it anymore, he growled. This isn't a one-time slip-up. You've been seeing him for weeks, and it wasn't accidental. You planned it all. I know you sent that letter as a distraction, so you could spend spring break together wherever you went. And by the way, your mom's wondering why you haven't visited. I guess you were too preoccupied with this garbage, he gestured at the sullen man, to bother seeing her. Turning to Melanie's lover, he swiftly snapped several pictures with his phone. When the man realized, he snarled, clenched his fists, and took a threatening step forward. Easy now, Adam warned, raising a hand, causing the man to back off. Adam turned to Melanie with a smirk. Seems your boyfriend's more lover than fighter. His tone hardened. Grab your things from the house and leave. Don't be here when I return, Mel. I meant it when I said I never want to see you again. Adam, please, she pleaded, collapsing onto the driveway in tears. He paid her no mind and headed to his car, while she sat on the driveway, her hands covering her face as she wept. En route to his office, Adam made a stop at a dumpster, disposing of his phone and the toy weapon tucked in his pocket. Glad these things look so real, he grinned coldly. Back at his desk, Adam emailed one of the photos he had taken. Surprisingly, he received a call shortly after. This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just send me a photo? Dr. Mayfair, forgive the intrusion again, but do you know the man in the photo? His name might be Carl. Is the woman beside him your wife? My ex-wife, to be precise. Lovely woman. I recall her being in one of my classes last year. As for the man, I recognize him. He's Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students. Carl Mannheim. Good to know, Doctor. I have some business to attend to with Mr. Mannheim. So, he's the serpent in your Garden of Eden? In a manner of speaking. But my Eve wasn't exactly innocent. Ah, I see. Quite intriguing. Well, I'm glad to have assisted you, though I'm sorry it's not the outcome you desired. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your time and help, regardless of the outcome. Good luck to you, my boy, and keep your spirits up. Things have a way of working out, speaking from experience. 2 months later, Adam sat with his lawyer, feeling irked. Any word from Melanie's lawyer? How's the divorce proceeding? Yes, I spoke with Hannah Montrose yesterday, and she sent a counteroffer to Melanie today. The good news is Melanie's agreed not to contest the divorce after hearing the recordings you made. Hannah persuaded her not to risk them in court. But the bad news is now that Melanie's accepted the marriage is over, she's keen on getting as much financial compensation as possible. Damn, she deceives me, gets caught, and then expects me to pay up. It's unfair. What's my cheating wife after? Typically, we'd see a request for dividing assets, but there's little to divide here. You rent, no pension, and minimal savings. Your only asset is your business share, which is running at a loss. Seems she's banking on it failing, so she's only asking for alimony. I appreciate her vote of confidence, Adam snapped sarcastically. So, how much alimony is she seeking? Considerably more than our offer. The lawyer handed him the document, and Adam gasped. This is absurd. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to pay that much monthly, I'm essentially bankrupting my business to satisfy her. Melanie won't negotiate, so Hannah will suggest it to Judge Abernathy. I won't hand over that much without a fight. We'll take our chances in court. Understood, Adam. But remember, Judge Abernathy holds all the power. You're at his mercy. About a month later, Adam sat anxiously in court. After arguments from both sides, Judge Abernathy adjourned. Any thoughts on how it's going? Adam whispered to his lawyer. Hard to say. It could swing anyway, or the judge might suggest a compromise. They stood as Judge Abernathy returned, then sat again as he called the opposing counsels to the bench. I assume your positions remain unchanged, the judge stated. The lawyers exchanged looks. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Before I decide, I'd like to question Miss Weatherby. Hannah Montrose looked tense but motioned for Melanie to approach. Stay calm, she whispered. And remember, address him as Your Honor. Adam's lawyer leaned in. Usually, it's not good when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched sourly as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified, noting the judge's attention on her. I think we're in trouble, he murmured to his lawyer. The judge reviewed papers, then turned to Melanie. Miss Weatherby, it seems the primary dispute is the alimony amount. Your offer is substantially higher than Mr. Weatherby's, correct? Yes, Your Honor. How do you justify your proposed amount? We're asking for more, considering my years of marriage and the need to start anew, Your Honor. However, Mr. Weatherby claims his sole income is from his struggling business. Why do you believe Mr. Weatherby can afford your proposed support? We argue he's artificially deflating his income by investing in his business. Adjustments could easily cover the support I seek. The judge remarked, examining the financial statement. It shows negative cash flow, Your Honor. Adam's accountants can manipulate numbers to yield any desired result. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie turned pale and shook her head firmly. Noticing this, Melanie swiftly corrected herself. No, Your Honor, not at all. Earnings can be deferred and investments accelerated, all within accepted accounting principles. He simply invests heavily in his company. Adam's blood pressure spiked. He whispered angrily, What a manipulative move. She knows it's untrue. She's just trying to pressure me into giving her what she wants, regardless of the truth. Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy reviewed the case summary. Until now, we've focused on your husband's business investments, Mrs. Weatherby. However, Mr. Weatherby has also invested significantly in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, Adam did pay for my tuition, but I worked diligently, completed all coursework, exams, and wrote my dissertation. I've dedicated myself for the past 2 years, including summers. And you recently graduated? Yes, sir, with honors, she proudly confirmed. He nodded. Very well, Mrs. Weatherby. That's all. You may be seated. Returning to her lawyer, Melanie hugged her in relief as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at both parties. After reviewing all evidence, I'll grant Mrs. Weatherby the full financial support requested, the judge announced. Adam winced, and Melanie hugged her lawyer in joy. But the judge wasn't finished. This settlement provides for a comfortable living without employment for Mrs. Weatherby, despite her recent completion of a degree that should qualify her for a lucrative position. To incentivize the use of her education, I'm awarding alimony for 6 months. Only 6 months? That's unfair, Melanie protested. I can and I have, the judge replied, striking the gavel. Next case. Her lawyer swiftly escorted Melanie away, though she continued to protest until a bailiff intervened. Do I only have to pay alimony for 6 months? I can manage that, Adam remarked to his lawyer as they left the courtroom. Pretty good outcome, his lawyer agreed. I thought we were in trouble when the judge favored her, but he wasn't impressed with her tactics. Not many husbands fare so well in divorce court. Wonder what swayed him in your favor. You don't think her pleading no contest to the infidelity charge played a role? He shouldn't have considered it when deciding the financial settlement. Adam glanced back to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. Well, whatever it is, I'm satisfied with the outcome. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder, and Adam turned to see an elderly man, vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. Adam firmly shook his hand. Professor, it's a pleasant surprise to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brought you to court today? The elderly man smiled. After our talk, I became curious about your case, so I decided to drop by and see how things turned out. His smile widened. It also gave me the chance to speak with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy. He shook Adam's hand again. I'm glad things worked out for you. If I can help in the future, I'd be glad to. He winked. Us divorced husbands need to stick together. As the professor left, Adam watched him go. Interesting, he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Gary in the crowd, but she vanished when he looked. It took a while before she dialed a familiar number on her phone, and when it was answered, she hesitantly said, Hello? Jerry, it's me, Melanie. Melanie, what a surprise. Haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you? To be honest, it's been tough. That's why I called. I needed someone to talk to. Sure. Tell me how you're doing. Are you working? That's part of the problem. Thought my MBA would land me a job, but employers here value experience more. Most offers I got were internships. Wow, that sounds tough. So where are you now? When alimony ended, I was desperate. Tried admin work, but it was terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. That's why I called. I can help analyze your finances if you're interested. Many overlook this. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd like to assist you, but my finances are stable right now, and I'm pretty confident about the future. I don't think I need help. I understand. No worries, Jerry. I hear that often, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's tough to break into this industry. In fact, I had to move back in with my mom to cut costs. Are you living with her now? What about you and Carl? Don't mention him. We split shortly after moving here. You broke up? What happened? It was awful. Carl dropped out of school, his thesis got rejected, and he refused to work. He became bitter and aggressive, so I had to involve the police. That sounds rough, Melanie, but now you're free. You can go out, meet new people, and have fun. Remember how much you missed that when you were married? Melanie sighed. But outings require money. Gary and I aren't well off right now, and going out isn't as glamorous or exciting as I thought. Actually, there are more creeps than good guys. Changing the subject, Melanie asked, How about you, Jerry? Anyone special? My life's taken a turn. I'm getting married next month. Married? That's incredible. Who's the lucky guy? You know him. It's Adam. Melanie, Adam and I are engaged. My Adam? Are you engaged to my Adam? You can't do this. I already did. We'll have a small ceremony at our new home, then head to Paris for our honeymoon. New house, honeymoon in Paris. Can Adam afford all that? Not only has my situation changed, but Adam's has too. The same month you moved to Florida, he landed a big order he'd been working on. After that, his business took off. His new product is in high demand in the auto industry. And there's more. Earlier this year, a large manufacturer made him an offer to buy his business for a fortune. He agreed, and the deal's closing next week. So, you see, our financial future is secure. Melanie could barely speak, but Gary persisted, her tone now altered. You know, Melanie, all of this could have been yours if you were content with what you had. I warned you from the start about the risks of your affair, and I cautioned you that there would be other women ready to step in if your marriage crumbled. But you were the one who encouraged me. You even came up with the plan. Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose in shock. Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You orchestrated everything from the beginning. I just shared an innocent fantasy with you, and you manipulated me into acting on it. You deceived me into thinking I could get away with an affair. Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't make you do anything against your will. I merely provided you with the opportunity. And no, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. I simply set things up so they'd unfold as I wanted. I trusted you, Gary. I thought you were my friend. Gary chuckled. You know what they say. All's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Adam knows what you did. You're a schemer. I'm sorry, Melanie, but I have plans with Adam tonight. I'll block your number after we hang up. You're despicable. Meanwhile, Jerry welcomed her fiancé home with a kiss. Adam mentioned receiving a letter from Melanie. Really? Jerry replied casually. I almost forgot about her. What'd she want? Adam glanced at Jerry neutrally. She claims you orchestrated everything to break us up. Pretty wild, huh? Jerry took a look at the letter and smirked. Poor Melanie. She could have made her little jealousy act more convincing if she signed it. Good friend. It took him a while to stop laughing.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm 54, and my wife is 56. We had a 19-year marriage, and just when I thought everything was solid, I discovered she was cheating on me. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. We never had kids due to fertility issues, and we even went through the whole IVF process, but it didn't work out. I do well for myself, owning vending machines and ATMs in North Carolina. My wife is an assistant store manager at Walmart, making a decent salary just under $70,000 per year. We never really had any major communication issues, and both our phones were open to each other. As time went on, though, I started noticing some changes. She would bring up an old friend of hers more frequently, giving me a detailed play-by-play of his life. It didn't quite register as a red flag at the time, but looking back, I realize I should have paid more attention. Despite this, we carried on with our lives, working, having date nights, and maintaining a decent sex life. Then came that fateful night when she texted me, saying she'd be late due to inventory at Walmart. It's a big deal, and she usually worked late during these times, so I thought nothing of it initially. But when she didn't come home by 2 a.m., I couldn't shake off the unease. I drove to Walmart, didn't find her car, and the sinking feeling set in. When she didn't answer my calls, the knot in my stomach tightened. The whole situation is tearing me apart, and I'm not sure where to go from here. She texted me after an hour or so, saying she was at a friend's house with some male coworkers, having drinks. Something about that didn't sit right with me. I mean, why didn't she let me know she was heading to someone's house? We've never had trust issues before. When I confronted her about it, she got upset, accused me of being controlling, and insisted nothing was going on. But the whole situation left me suspicious, especially after the conversation we had about spicing up our sex life with threesomes. When she finally stumbled in at 4 a.m., reeking of alcohol, I didn't say much. I'm not the type to accuse without evidence, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. The next day, she apologized, claiming she got too drunk too fast. I told her it wasn't smart and reminded her how lucky she was not to get pulled over. She maintained that nothing happened with the guys. Still, I couldn't fully buy it. I warned her that if I found out she was cheating, I'd end the marriage. A few months passed, and things seemed to be improving. We were trying to communicate more openly. But then, I noticed changes. Her phone suddenly face down, password protected, and texting an unfamiliar number. My suspicions kicked back in. Going through the phone bill opened a Pandora's box. I noticed my wife was texting a number I didn't recognize, and they were in constant communication, thousands of texts and calls, even on the night she didn't come home until the next morning. That raised red flags, big time. I decided to do some digging on my own, checking my phone contacts against the bill. I didn't spill the beans to my wife. I wanted to uncover everything myself. So, over the next few weeks, I snooped around, emails on the computer, old phones we had lying around, but found zilch. Everything seemed to be locked away in her phone, which I suddenly couldn't access. Despite not wanting to invade her privacy, I felt pushed against a wall. That's when I took a drastic step and hired a private investigator. After handing over all the necessary info, we discussed North Carolina's divorce laws, and the investigator dropped a bomb about something called alienation of affection, where a third party wrecks your marriage. A week later, the investigator summoned me to his office with information that made my blood boil. He had evidence of my wife leaving work early, meeting this guy at his place, staying there until she had to come home. And the kicker? On 2 occasions, another guy showed up at this house, and guess who was there to greet him? Yep, my wife, sharing kisses. That was the final straw. I left the investigator's office armed with all this damning evidence on a flash drive. Grateful for his help, I headed straight to the attorney he recommended and filed for divorce immediately. The day my wife texted about being late coming home, I didn't respond. Instead, I packed my bags, called my brother, and told him everything. He was just as furious as I was. I headed to his place, knowing I needed time away to figure things out. I went home, packed a few things, and left for my brother's place. Surprisingly, I didn't get any calls or texts from my wife. I thought she'd blow up my phone when she realized I wasn't at home, but there was a reason for her silence. She was in jail, arrested for a DUI, which, in a strange way, delayed the inevitable. She bonded out before her work shift, called me, and left a voicemail, wanting to talk. I didn't answer any of her calls or respond to her messages. She was served with divorce papers at Walmart later that day. Fast forward 2 months, and the divorce hearing arrived. My wife's attorney tried to get me to pay spousal support and hand over the house and a part of my business. When my attorney presented the evidence of her infidelity, the judge ruled against spousal support and the business, but ordered us to sell the house. Fortunately, there wasn't much equity, so I wasn't overly concerned. After the divorce was finalized, my attorney and I discussed filing a lawsuit against my ex-wife's affair partner for alienation of affection. Fast forward another 3 months, the house was sold, and the ex-wife got about $15,000 from the equity. I got a similar amount. Around the same time, she got arrested for another DUI, fined, did community service, and had a suspended 2-month jail sentence. We talked a few times after the divorce regarding the house, but whenever she tried to bring up us, I hung up the phone. My private investigator found out her affair partner owned a restaurant in the area, and my lawyer and I decided to move forward with the lawsuit against him for alienation of affection. Now, I'm waiting on the court date for that. If there are any updates, I'll be sure to share them. Now for the second story. I never thought I'd find myself writing something like this, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. My girlfriend, Ashley, cheated on me with her manager at the movie theater where she works. The betrayal hit me hard, and I had to share what went down. Ashley and I had been together for nearly 3 years, and we'd been living together for the past year. Like any couple, we had our share of ups and downs, but I genuinely believed we were in a good place. A few weeks ago, an old friend from school, Emily, got a job at the same theater as Ashley. Emily and I were never super close, but we got along, and I was happy they would be working together. It didn't take long for Emily to discover what was happening between Ashley and her scumbag manager. Being the good person she is, Emily couldn't stand by and let me be kept in the dark. She called me up and dropped the bomb, providing proof in the form of a photo of Ashley and the manager getting too cozy in the break room and a video of her going into his office, not emerging for over an hour. The evidence was undeniable, and I was heartbroken and furious. Emily managed to talk me down and suggested that instead of confronting Ashley in a rage, I should take the high road while also getting some sweet revenge. It sounded crazy, but she convinced me it might be the way to go. So, with Emily's encouragement, I devised a plan that would give Ashley a taste of life without me. I changed the locks on my house, ghosted Ashley completely, and left town for a week. I got new locks and changed them while Ashley was at work. Without leaving a note or sending any texts, I packed a bag and drove to a friend's place about 2 hours away. The idea was to make Ashley panic when she couldn't get into the house or reach me. The thought of her freaking out was strangely satisfying. Now, I'm waiting to see how she reacts to this unexpected turn of events. I stayed with him for a week, completely off the grid. I turned off my phone, avoided social media, making it impossible for Ashley to track me down. Throughout that week, I heard through the grapevine that Ashley was losing her mind. She couldn't get into the house, reach me, and her stuff was all locked inside. Honestly, it felt great to know my heartbreak was slowly morphing into a feeling of control and satisfaction. I knew I had to see this through. When I finally came back to town, I didn't let her know I was home. I wanted her to sweat it out a bit longer. Sure enough, 3 days after my return, she showed up at the house, frantic and on the verge of tears. I answered the door, acting like I didn't know who she was, playing it cool, asking if I could help her with something. She was hysterical, thinking I had died or something, babbling about how she was worried to death. I continued to play dumb, saying I just bought the house and had no idea who she was. I told her that someone had left a bunch of stuff in the house, and if it was hers, she should take it and leave before I burned it all. The look on her face was priceless, like she was in the Twilight Zone. I enjoyed watching her go through the entire gamut of emotions. I couldn't keep up the act forever, though. I finally broke character, saying I thought I recognized her, but she couldn't be the girl I thought I knew because that girl had cheated on me. The shock and realization on her face were almost too good to be true. It was like all in one moment. She understood what the last 11 days of torment were all about. I got her. I told her to get her stuff out of my house and to never call me again, ever. She started crying and begging for forgiveness, but I wasn't having any of it. Telling her she needed to leave before my new girlfriend showed up for our Netflix and chill date, even though there was no actual date planned, was a bold move, but it worked. She took her boxes and left in tears, apologizing and sobbing. It may sound twisted, but after what she put me through, I felt like she deserved it. I can't help but feel proud of the psychological torment she went through and the inconvenience of not having access to any of her stuff. Now, for the cherry on top, remember Emily, the old friend from school who ratted out Ashley? We started hanging out more after this whole ordeal, and one thing led to another. We're dating now, and things are going really well. Life threw me a curveball, but I managed to hit it out of the park. So, that's my story. I never thought I'd be one of those people posting crazy revenge tales, but here we are. Sometimes life has a funny way of working things out. As for Ashley, I hope she learned her lesson. Don't mess with someone who's willing to change the locks and leave town for a week. My advice for anyone going through something similar: don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and take control of the situation. I could have easily confronted Ashley and had a messy fight, but instead, I took the high road while also getting some sweet revenge. Look where it got me. A new and better relationship and a story that I'll never forget. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
It was an ordinary Thursday evening, but things were about to change. My wife, Kathy, and I were in the kitchen, making dinner together. She was chopping onions while I sliced cheese and ham for our omelets. Then, out of the blue, she said something that stopped me cold. Ben, we've been married for almost 7 years, and we've always been honest with each other, right? I set down the knife, caught off guard. Of course, I replied. Honesty is the foundation of our relationship. Kathy's expression grew serious. I met someone, she said quietly. A jolt went through me. What do you mean? I asked, even though I was afraid of what she'd say. She looked away for a moment, then continued. He's a guy from work. A really nice guy. I've been having lunch with him. My stomach twisted. Is there more to it? Do you like him? I asked, holding my breath. She glanced down, guilt written across her face, and nodded softly. I felt a wave of nausea. We needed to talk. I set the knife down and steadied myself, pressing both hands onto the table. How far has it gone with this guy? I asked, my voice barely steady. Kathy leaned back against the counter, avoiding my gaze. We've been having lunch every day for a few weeks, she admitted, and we had dinner last week when you had a late business meeting. I took a deep breath. Have you held hands, kissed, or done anything more? She turned pale, then nodded slowly. We've kissed. A wave of sickness rolled over me. Did it go further than just a kiss? She looked at me, shook her head, and said, Not yet. I felt my knees go weak and sank into a chair. So, you're considering it? I asked quietly. Her lips tightened, and she gave a stiff nod. I think so, she whispered. He wants me to go away with him for a weekend. I could barely get the words out. Are you going? She closed her eyes for a moment before answering, Yes. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to understand what he means to me. I'm sorry, Ben. I promised him I'd go. I couldn't just leave without telling you. My voice was hollow as I asked, "Where are you going?" "Miami," she replied, barely above a whisper. I forced myself to ask, "Sharing a room, I suppose?" She nodded. "He's booked a suite. And when are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning." I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "So, you waited until the last second to tell me, huh?" She looked at me, her face tense. "I wanted to be sure I was going through with it before I hurt you." "How considerate of you, Kathy," I said, my voice heavy with sarcasm. "Does he even know you're married?" "Yes, of course," she said defensively. "I always wear my wedding rings." "Do me a favor then," I said bitterly. "Don't wear them when you're in his bed in Miami." Her face fell, but I continued. "Does he know you talk about me?" "I talk about you all the time when I'm with him," she said softly. I could feel the resentment building. "I'm sure you've had plenty of nice things to say about me, right? Like how I'm such a nice guy, just like him. Or maybe you've mentioned that I'm not exactly stellar in bed, not the best provider, or that I leave toenail clippings on the carpet." She looked hurt. "I've never said anything negative about you, Ben. He knows I love you," she said softly. I shook my head, feeling disbelief mixed with anger. "But apparently, not enough to stop you from spending a weekend away with him. You love me, but maybe you're not in love with me. Is that it?" She sighed, her voice wavering. I don't know. I'm confused." "So, you're seeking clarity in the arms of this really nice man who knows you're married but doesn't care?" I shot back. "Has this nice guy been tested for STDs recently?" She winced. "He's not like that, Ben. He hasn't been with anyone in over 2 years." "That's what he says," I replied, my skepticism clear. "But I bet he's not telling you the whole truth. Guys like him see a beautiful, married woman and want to conquer her. That's the real game." Kathy looked away, guilt on her face. I took a deep breath. "Is this nice guy your boss?" She shook her head. "No. He's my boss's boss." "So, you're really moving up, huh? Climbing the corporate ladder with your body instead of your talent and hard work?" Kathy's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm not sure what I'm doing, Ben, but your crude approach isn't helping you escape with another man for a weekend in Vegas?" I scoffed. I took a steadying breath, my voice softer but thick with emotion. "Let me ask you something. If I beg you not to go, if I get down on my knees and plead with you to stay here with me, will you do it?" She looked down, avoiding my eyes, and shook her head. "I can't, Ben. I promised Roger I'd go with him, and I can't break my word." "So that was his name." I took a breath, feeling the anger surge again. "I see. You can break the vows you made to me 7 years ago, but you can't break a promise to Roger?" Her voice softened. "I'm sorry, Ben. I don't want to hurt you, but I have to do this for me. Please try to understand." In that moment, I knew I'd lost her, but through the pain and misery, an idea surfaced. A final parting shot that might, if nothing else, make her pause and think about the impact of her choices on us. I stood up, glanced briefly in her direction, then turned toward the basement door. "Wait here," I said quietly. "I want to show you something. Then I'll get out of your way so you can get ready for your trip." I went down to the basement and found the Halloween prop I was looking for. Then I opened our wall safe, took out a piece of paper, grabbed a hammer and some nails, and brought everything back upstairs to the kitchen. Kathy looked confused as she saw me carrying a small wooden coffin, something we usually use as a Halloween decoration. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone uncertain. I set the coffin on the kitchen table, clearing the sandwich fixings off to the floor. "Just bear with me for a moment," I said. "We've been together for so long, and before it all ends, I want to show you something." I tapped the top of the 3-foot wooden coffin. "This is a coffin. Well, it's a cheap Halloween prop, but it still represents a coffin. Here's the lid, and here's a hammer and some nails." Kathy's expression grew uneasy. "And this," I continued, holding up the paper from the safe, "is our marriage license." I opened the lid of the coffin, placed our wedding license inside, and closed it with deliberate care. "Ben, what in the world are you doing? Put our marriage license back where you found it." Kathy's voice was rising, an edge of panic breaking through. "Why, Kathy?" I asked, meeting her gaze steadily. "It doesn't hold any significance anymore. It belongs here, in the coffin, ready for its burial." She blinked rapidly, tears welling up. "What are you talking about, Ben?" I shook my head, the pain cutting deep. "It's proof that we're married. A truth that won't mean anything once you leave to be with Roger tomorrow." Now she was visibly shaken. "You don't know that, Ben. I don't even know that." "Oh, I know, Kathy. You've made your choice to run off with Roger. And mine." I paused, gripping the hammer. Mine is to choose divorce. I took a nail, placed it on the lid, and drove it in with a sharp thud. Kathy flinched at the sound. That's the first nail, I said, symbolizing all the lunches and dinners you had with him. I positioned another nail at a corner and hammered it in. And this one, for the kisses you shared with him. Her mouth quivered as I continued, each nail sealing more than just the coffin. I drove the third nail into another corner. This nail represents your agreement to go away with Roger, the really nice guy, for a weekend in Vegas, I said, lifting the final nail, positioning it at the last corner of the coffin. With one firm hit, I began driving it into the wood. And that's the fourth nail. Kathy's eyes widened as I continued, my voice steady. You know the expression, the final nail in the coffin? It seals things for eternity, solidifying the fate of whatever's inside. Our marriage is in that coffin, Kathy. When you leave for Miami with Roger tomorrow morning, that last nail will seal it, ending our life together, irreconcilably and irrevocably. Her voice cracked as she spoke. You can't mean that, Ben. You can't throw us away over one mistake. I looked at her, feeling both the weight of my words and the sting of her choices. I'm not the one tossing our relationship away, Kathy. You are. I've loved you with every fiber of my being. You're the most beautiful, captivating woman I've ever known. It's been an honor and a joy to call you my wife for these past 7 years. No, I'm not the one ending things here. If I could, I'd climb into that coffin with our marriage certificate and be buried right alongside it, I said, feeling the ache in my chest deepen, just to satisfy my curiosity and maybe twist the knife a bit deeper. If I checked the luggage you're packing, would I find some lingerie? Maybe a negligee you bought just for this trip? Kathy didn't answer, but her tearful expression said it all. I nodded, feeling both devastated and numb. That's what I thought. I took a step back. I'm leaving now. I don't want to witness your final act of betrayal. I'll come back to get what I need for the next couple of weeks after you've left with Roger. While you're in Vegas, though I suspect you'll be too busy with Roger to think of anything else, you might want to consider what items in the house you'd like to keep. I won't be here when you return, but my lawyer will be in touch in the next week or two. I grabbed my jacket, walked out the door, got into my car, and drove away. It was the worst evening of my life. I felt hollow, numb, and utterly lost. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to escape. Eventually, I found a cheap motel, far enough from the airport to avoid any risk of seeing Roger. It didn't matter where I stayed. In the end, he had won. Or maybe I had just lost. My phone buzzed a few times, Kathy's name lighting up on the screen, but I ignored it. I couldn't bear to hear her excuses or listen to her try to explain away what she had done to our marriage. That night, I slept poorly, haunted by visions of them together, their intimacy replacing what I thought we'd shared. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed, threw on the same clothes, and found a nearby diner. I ordered coffee and toast, but I could barely manage a few sips. Despite my efforts to shut out thoughts of Kathy, my mind drifted back to her. I could imagine her holding hands with Roger on the plane, sharing quiet smiles in the taxi, eager to reach their room. I had heard about the pain of betrayal, but until now, I never understood just how deeply it could break someone. At 9, I finally called my office to let my assistant know I wouldn't be coming in. She asked if I was feeling unwell, and I simply replied yes, hoping to be back to my usual self by Monday. After hanging up, I noticed a barrage of missed calls from Kathy and a dozen text messages. I didn't delete them, nor did I read any of them. The last message and call were from 7:45, so I assumed she had given up trying to reach me before leaving to be with Roger, the man who had taken my wife. I refused to call him a nice guy anymore. He was anything but that. Revenge on him felt inevitable. I just needed the right moment. To be cautious, I waited until 10:30 to head home and collect what I needed for my new life as a single man. As I pulled into the driveway and opened the garage door, the sight of Kathy's car missing hit me like a ton of bricks. She had likely taken it to meet Roger, avoiding the need for a taxi. I scolded myself for even considering that she might have changed her mind and stayed home. Get real, buddy, I muttered. She dumped you. She found a better deal. Some guy who could whisk her away to Miami and pamper her in luxury hotels. Wake up and move on, I told myself. You might not find someone as stunning as her, but you'll find someone. Despite my own words, I struggled to believe them deep down. As I stepped inside the house, an unsettling silence enveloped me, making everything feel foreign through the fog of a broken heart. It had once radiated warmth and vitality, but now it felt cold and hollow. Moving through the kitchen, I noticed that the remnants of cheese and ham I had scattered on the floor were gone, and the coffin was no longer on the table. It had probably been thrown in the trash, a testament that my desperate attempt to reach Kathy had fallen flat. Lust, I reminded myself, can cloud judgment in profound ways. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom and pushed the door open. There, atop the bed, sat the coffin, its lid partially lifted and a crowbar resting nearby. Someone, presumably Kathy, had gone to great lengths to pry some of those nails loose. Out of curiosity, I checked and found the marriage license I had hidden inside, now placed between the two pillows at the head of the bed. Looks like she didn't even want to grant me that victory, I muttered to myself, turning toward the dresser to grab my underwear and socks. I noticed a pile on the table by the window. 3 sets of beautifully crafted, undoubtedly expensive women's underwear, all torn to shreds, along with a yellow negligee, reduced to ribbons. Atop the pile was a piece of paper with a message written in bold black benaire. I cannot share what I do not own. What on earth? I exclaimed aloud. Glancing back at the bed, I spotted a similar note propped against the coffin, the same message scrawled in the same black ink. Just then, the screech of tires and the crash of 2 cars echoed from outside, followed by the front door bursting open. Where are you? Oh God, please be here. Please, Ben. You have to be here so I can tell you how wrong I was. How horribly, stupidly wrong I was. A woman's voice screamed through the house. I heard hurried footsteps racing up the stairs, then the sound of stumbling and falling halfway up. She was sobbing uncontrollably, and when she spotted me standing at the top of the landing, she reached out her arms and began to crawl toward me. In all our 7 years of marriage and 2 years of dating before that, I had never seen her like this. She wore no makeup. Her hair was a wild mess, her eyes swollen and red. Dressed in a Seattle Tacoma sweatshirt, gray sweatpants, and those fuzzy but funny slippers I had jokingly gifted her one Christmas, she looked utterly lost. Kathy, what's going on? Where's Roger? I asked, concern flooding my voice. She shook her head violently, her words tumbling out in a rush. I can't give away what's not mine, Ben. That's what I told him. Who? I asked, my heart pounding. Roger. That's what I told him when he came to pick me up. I can't give away what's not mine. Kathy's voice trembled as she continued her slow crawl up the stairs toward me. I was dressed just like this. He asked why I wasn't ready to go to Miami with him, and I repeated that I couldn't give away what's not mine. He said, what the hell does that mean? And I told him I couldn't go anywhere with him, would never go with him, would never speak to him again because I don't belong to him. My body belongs only to my husband, and I will never share it with anyone else. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she continued. He called me names, Ben. He said I was a liar and a tease, that I'd wasted his money on airfare and a suite at the Aria. He threatened to ruin my reputation at work, calling me a fraud, and said he'd get me fired. I told him he couldn't get me fired because I quit. She finally reached the top of the stairs and collapsed at my feet, her body racked with sobs. I knelt down beside her, my heart aching for the woman I thought I'd lost. Kathy, are you saying you really mean it? That you want to be with me? He was furious. His tires screeched for a block as he sped away. Finally reaching the landing, Kathy wrapped her arms around my ankles, clinging to my legs. I'm so ashamed, she cried. I hurt the only person who's always shown me love, who would do anything for me. I betrayed the trust of the man who means everything to me. I'm so sorry. Her sobs were heart-wrenching, and I stood there, stunned, as she held on to me for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a few minutes. I couldn't move. The woman I adored, the center of my universe, the one I had worshipped with every fiber of my being, had shattered my heart. And now, half a day later, she was still clinging to my legs, sobbing. Every fiber of my being urged me to gather her in my arms, to express how deeply I cherished her, and to assure her that we could navigate through this difficult time together. But I remained frozen, unable to move. The events of the past 15 hours flooded my mind. While part of me believed she hadn't actually gone through with anything physical with Roger, the sense of betrayal lingered. A married woman doesn't engage in intimate lunches and dinners, share passionate kisses, or plan a getaway in Miami with another man. Though she had come to her senses before any irrevocable harm was done, the betrayal cut deep. I stood there, gazing at the woman who had, until last night, been my entire world. It was clear she was in as much pain as I was. Our marriage hung precariously on the edge of a dark abyss, and I wondered if we had the strength to prevent ourselves from toppling over. Finally, I reached down and lifted Kathy to her feet, embracing her until her sobs subsided. Let's go brew some fresh coffee, I suggested. Thank you, Ben. Oh, Ben, she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude and regret. I think I might have damaged your car when I pulled into the driveway just now. Yeah, I heard it. We'll discuss that too, I assured her. I helped her back downstairs and into the kitchen. As we sipped our coffee, I asked, what made you change your mind? Last night, you seemed so sure about going with Roger. What happened? She looked at me over her cup, her eyes still red and swollen. You buried our marriage. What do you mean? I asked, puzzled. You put our marriage license in that coffin and sealed it shut. After you left, I went upstairs to pack, but I kept thinking about our marriage license trapped in that dark place. It felt like our marriage was over, like you were burying it. It was in a place with no air, no light, and it couldn't escape. Then I started to think about all the wonderful things our marriage had given us, all it meant to me. We were so happy together, and I remembered how happy you always made me. She paused, her voice trembling slightly. I guess I dozed off, she continued, because I dreamed I was in that coffin, in that dark place, and I felt like I was suffocating. It felt so real that it woke me up, and I knew I had to open that coffin and get our marriage out. Let it breathe again. Let me breathe again. She chuckled softly. I never realized how well you hid your tools. It took me at least an hour to find a crowbar, and another half-hour to haul that coffin up to the bedroom and pry the lid open enough to get our license out. I felt possessed, like I had to retrieve it before you could seal the coffin shut. When did you decide not to go with Roger? I asked. She giggled again, a sound that warmed my soul. About 2 seconds after you left. I knew I could never go away with Roger, or anyone else. I felt so foolish and ashamed. How could I treat the only man I've ever loved the way I treated you? I tried calling you over and over, but you wouldn't answer. Then I started texting, but that didn't work either. Much later, after I finally pried the coffin lid open enough to reach inside, I thought about how I would tell Roger I never wanted to see him again. I wiped off all my makeup and put on your old sweatshirt and sweatpants. My eyes were already red and swollen from crying, and I wondered how Roger would see me, the real me that you always see and still love. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known, Kathy. Even now, you look perfect to me, I said. And when I realized that, I knew I had to do everything in my power to win you back, to make you love me again. I hadn't packed much yet, but as I started to unpack, I saw the lingerie I bought for the trip with Roger, and I broke down again. Just the sight of it made me sick. They were the final expression of my betrayal, and I had to destroy them. I grabbed my scissors and ripped them all to shreds. They cost a lot of money, but I couldn't bear to look at them. I destroyed them just like I thought I had destroyed you and our marriage. That's when I went to where I kept our marriage license and picked it up to look at it. It's really simple. It says that Kathy Russell and Ben Hardy got married on June 12, 2005. My maid of honor and your best man witnessed it. As I read it, memories flooded back. We stood in front of all our family and friends, promising to be faithful to each other until death. I cried again, realizing I couldn't be with anyone else but you. I told Roger I couldn't share what I didn't own when he came to pick me up. Thank you for sharing. You've given me a lot to think about. Do you think we'll get through this and be okay? Kathy asked. I'm not sure, Kathy. I hope so, but right now I'm uncertain. You nearly broke me last night. I've never felt such pain before. I felt betrayed, alone, and helpless. Can you imagine knowing the person you love most, the one you've always trusted completely, is choosing someone else over you? Tears welled up in her eyes again. Oh, Ben, I'm so sorry. I was out of my mind. I'd do anything to make it right, even die if that would help. Dying definitely wouldn't help. I want you alive, healthy, and, more than anything, I want to trust you again. Luckily, it won't be as hard as it could be because, like you said, we've always been honest with each other. Even last night when you expressed what you thought you felt. What now, Kathy? I'm not sure about you, but I didn't sleep well last night. If it's okay with you, I'd like to have you with me in bed. It might be too soon for that. We don't have to do anything, Ben. I just want to feel you next to me where only you belong, she said, her dark eyes pleading earnestly. I couldn't resist her plea. Okay, but no funny business, Kathy. I'm still upset with you, I replied firmly. A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. Anything you say, darling, she said, crossing her heart. She took my arm and led me upstairs to our room. Absolutely no funny business. For a couple of months, things remained uncertain. No matter how hard I tried, there were times when that night would haunt me, leaving me in a bad mood. Kathy seemed to notice those difficult moments and would shower me with love until she became the only thing on my mind. Eventually, she decided to quit her job. When her HR boss asked her why, she opened up about Roger. Though embarrassed, she felt the need to share her experience. Not surprisingly, HR informed her that Roger, the seemingly nice guy, had 3 harassment complaints against him. As a result, he lost his job and any professional references. Kathy was allowed to keep her position and even received a substantial sum of money in exchange for not suing the company. She stayed at her job for about 6 months, and during that time, we discovered we were going to be parents. Life moves forward. Sometimes, you have to give someone a second chance to make things right, even if many would disagree with that decision. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
We have all heard the cliches. Good things happen to those who do good things. Play it forward. Bread cast upon the waters comes back tenfold. God does not always pay on Sundays, etc. Bullshit. Life is more like no good deed goes unpunished. Of course, that was not my thought when a grungy biker-looking guy approached me late one night as I was putting the nozzle away from a well-worn pickup truck, after filling up with gas. "Hey buddy, can you help a scrambler out?" he asked, looking around. Now I can see why this guy thought I was biker. I had a skull and crossbones bandana wrapped around my head, which supported mirrored sunglasses. A scraggy beard matched the dark splotches on my oil-splattered torn jeans. Add in my 6'4" frame's not-so-insignificant belly, which a leather vest and dirty Harley-Davidson t-shirt did not do a good job of hiding, and I looked like the stereotypical biker. However, looks can be deceiving, as I was a complete poser. Not only could I barely ride a tricycle, I had trouble with any car not equipped with an automatic transmission. I was at this gas station only to fill up my dad's truck after returning from a costume party at his house. But what the hell? My wife was staying overnight at my dad's cleaning up, with the kids. Why not live out my fantasy a little longer? "What you need, pal?" I said, as I put away a massive billfold, complete with chain I had purchased last week at a flea market. The biker looked around nervously before speaking. I must have been doing a ton when I and the cruiser ate some pavement back there. He pointed out to the darkness beyond the gas station. Jammed the fork in a damn pothole and got me some road rash doing an OTB. Took me forever to hoof it here. This guy was quite the chatterbox, but I had no idea what he was saying, so I kept quiet. "I need your chase here." He pounded on the side of my truck to scoop up my ride and ferry me back to the house. The biker pulled a wad of cash out of his pocket. "I can get more at the compound from the club if you need." "Put that away," I said, as I waved at the money in Chatterbox's hand. I was having an internal debate. This was a chance to see the inside of a real motorcycle hangout. That beat my day job of moving numbers around on a spreadsheet any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I tried to act calm as I scratched at my beard that took me 2 months to grow for the costume party. "Get in," I grunted to my Chatterbox biker. Chatterbox stopped talking for a second as he smiled and opened the passenger door. The twins rushed into the house the next morning, making me spill my coffee, with only the energy 3-year-old boys can have. Daddy, look what Grandpa gave us." They were still wearing their Batman costumes from the night before, but both wielding plastic baseball bats. My wife trailed in after them. "Boys, go change now, then you can go outside and play." The kids ran to their rooms, whacking each other with the baseball bats as they scurried down the hallway. "How was Dad?" I asked, and as I poured her a cup of coffee, and shrugged as she sat down. "Your dad was happy to see the boys." Dad and had never clicked, although and had a good steady job as an admin assistant. Dad was not overjoyed when I told him I was going to marry him. "Randall," Dad had said, "why are you settling for such a plain, dull, boring woman? The only reason I can see and agreeing to marry you is you are the best she can get right now. Dad and loves me, and I love her. We have the same interests, goals, desires, and values. Why do you want to piss on my parade?" Dad just waved his hand. "Blah, you'll both lead dreary, dull lives, until one day one of you will start wanting something better. Damn, son, live a little. Go get drunk, screw some strange, howl at the moon. Otherwise, you are going to be saddled with 2.5 kids plus a house with a mortgage, working 9 to 5 as some drone. Do you want your life's highlight to be planning a 2-week vacation to Disney World or the Grand Canyon? That kind of dismal existence is not living, just waiting to die." Dad did not convince me to drop in, and truth be told, we did both work 9 to 5 jobs for the county, and we did look forward to taking the twins to Disney World. I did not think it was boring and seemed to enjoy our life. Of course, we had always lived that way, so how would we know the difference? Anne's words brought me back to the present. Your dad seemed to enjoy the party. It is the first time since your mom died that he even said something nice to me. I feigned shock, putting my hand over my heart. Dad gave you a compliment? And looked shyly over the rim of her coffee cup. Yup, he liked my Catwoman costume. Said he would love to see me climb a wall. I laughed as and continued. Your dad wants his truck back right away. You know how he hates it when he has to drive your Prius hybrid. I smirked. Dad never was exactly a father knows best TV show kind of dad. His bedtime stories were along the lines of, and all the kids cleaned their room, got Dad a beer, and went straight to bed. The Andy. Now it was Anne's turn to laugh as I leaned back in my chair. But Anne, let me tell you about my little adventure with Dad's truck last night. Anne sat mesmerized as I retold what happened. When I finished, she could not stop asking questions. Finally, she ran out of queries. Randall, you were really at a motorcycle clubhouse? I am a little angry with you. What if something happened? I have seen Sons of Anarchy on Netflix. I waved my hand at her. It was fine. They kept trying to get me to go to the back room with a girl. I saw Anne's face get red, so I quickly added, of course I didn't. Said I was recovering from a STD. Chatterbox, the guy I helped out last night, kept pushing beers on me. You don't drink. Sure, Anne, Randall the accountant does not drink, but Randall the outlaw biker can handle a beer or two. But look what parting gift my new BFF gave me. And watched as I pulled a little cellophane bag out of my shirt pocket. Randall, what is that? Damn, and I thought you were the TV series Breaking Bad biggest fan. I think it is crystal meth. At least it looks like crystal meth. You are not going to try it, are you? And said, looking toward the hallway where the twins continued whacking each other with the plastic bats. Nah, I'll turn it over to the sheriff on Monday. I scratched my beard. That reminds me, I got to shave this thing. And ran a hand over my face. Why don't you wait on that? The boys are busy. Let's go into the bedroom, and you can show me how an outlaw biker treats his old lady. I turned over the small bag to the sheriff, who was an old friend from high school, along with my biker tail on Monday. On Friday, he called me into his office. I still had my beard, and had really gotten into the whole outlaw biker and old lady role-playing. Who was I to argue? If it got me this much sex, I would be Superman and pretend to fly, even though I can't even swim. The sheriff had another man in his office. The guy had government written all over him. He was DEA and got right to the point. That dope you got is high-quality stuff we think is coming from somewhere north, maybe out of Canada. We have never been able to establish a logistics route. Think you can help us out and make some introductions? I could not help stifle my laugh. You can't be serious. Last weekend was a freak occurrence. Do not let the beard fool you. I move numbers around for a living, not drugs. You must have undercover guys for this kind of stuff. Oh, we do. Real good guys, too. DEA continued. But we need someone to make introductions. As a CI or confidential informant, you can do and say a lot more than a law enforcement officer. We just need a contact. The sheriff broke in. Randall, think of it as an acting role, like the plays in high school. You know, all the world's a stage kind of thing. I had done some walk-on parts in high school, college, and even at the local community theater. There was always a role for the big dumb guy. But this was a whole different ballgame. I looked at both of them in amazement. Sure, all the world's a stage, and everyone is under-rehearsed and unprepared. Somehow I don't think being an elf in the school Christmas pageant is the same as pretending to be a meth-dealing biker. DEA spoke up. Don't worry, we will be behind you all the way. Oh yeah? How far behind me? DEA ignored my comment. You know how to get in touch with the guy? I pointed a finger at my head. I do numbers for a living, remember? I got it right here. 9 months later, the large banquet hall was filled to capacity for the celebration. It was an alphabet of law enforcement agencies, DEA, ATF, FBI, IRS, DHS, even the RCMP, along with the state troopers and a dozen county sheriff's offices. They were all celebrating the end of Operation Great White, which had netted over 100 arrests and rolled up one of the West's biggest transportation, shipping, and distribution meth operations. Me? I was celebrating the end of my not-so-consensual undercover CI role. No matter how many times I tried to get out, I was always being drawn back into the operation. The last 8 months I had been moved to a different location to help with establishments of other agents' cover and my family's safety. I had never been separated from my wife and son so long, and was not happy about it. Now I was sitting at a table, with my wife and father accepting constant congratulations from the fellows around the room. My dad kept telling me how proud he was of me. Of course, he was half sloshed from the open bar, and was also looking pretty tipsy after more than a few glasses of champagne. My dad had his arm around my shoulder. "Goddamn, Randall, my son. You are a real man after all." I couldn't believe it when that government attorney guy showed up and said the cops needed your help. I tried not to breath in my dad's booze breath. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate you looking after and the boys for me. I know it must have been difficult. Dad grabbed and with his other arm so abruptly she spilled her drink. "No worries," he slurred. "Me and your bride got along fine. In fact, we missed you," and broke in, moving out of Dad's grasp and giving me a hug. "I missed you. The boys missed you. I wish you did not have to have been away so long." Suddenly, a screeching feedback filled the room as a tall, handsome man tried to speak into a podium mic. He was the federal attorney who was given the task of overseeing Operation Great White when its scope became apparent. "Let T-Bone, the next governor, speak," a drunk voice yelled out from the crowd. The tall man at the mic just smiled and waved at the assembled lawmen. I had been filled in by lots of the cops about him. From a wealthy, well-connected political family on the coast, William T. Boone, or T-Bone, had been an undergrad at Stanford, done law school at Harvard, and after a stint in the military, Jack was punching his ticket with the U.S. Attorney's Office to groom him for a future governor race. As T-Bone droned on about what a great day this has for law-abiding citizens, and how much safer the nation was, his pride, etc. I kept looking into Ann's eyes. She winked at me and crept her hand under the table to stroke my groin. My shock must have been evident on my face as Ann smiled and sped up her movements. I glanced at my watch, wondering if we could slip away unnoticed. We were unable to slip away, and had to wait until the end of the entire event. Fortunately, a nice town car had been provided for us. Dad was well-oiled, repeating himself to the driver about his big, bad undercover son, and was beyond tipsy and never took her eyes off me, holding onto my hand in a death grip. I was feeling no pain either, and wished the driver would hurry to my home. I do not recall how I ended up in the living room alone, but remember my youngest boy shaking me awake. "Whoa, son, what are you doing up so late?" I asked in a stupor, taking him into my arms. "GBA and Mom are making lots of noise in the room and woke me up." The boys each had their own rooms, but had moved in together so my dad could take one of their rooms and stay with, and when I got moved to the undercover house, I carried my groggy son, stumbling up the stairs and putting him in bed. I then staggered to the room my dad was staying in and opened the door. At first, my brain refused to register the image sent from my pupils. I rubbed my eyes thinking it was a side effect of the booze I had consumed earlier. The curtain in the window was open. It was a full moon. The light was so bright you could have read a newspaper by it. However, now the moonlight was illuminating my naked wife and astride my equally naked father, doing her best cowgirl riding a bronco impression. I had the strangest thought that they had not even turned down the covers, as the bedspread Disney cartoon characters seemed to animate and mock me while Ann and my father thrust together. I shook my head violently, then bit the inside of my cheek. The sharp pain in my mouth told me I was awake. I do not know how long I stood frozen in place, but the changing pitch of Ann's moaning snapped me out of my stupor, as I knew that sound signaled the start of her orgasm. I reached out and yanked Ann off my father, throwing her to the floor. Dad must have been on the verge also, as his semen spurted all over the main Disney character from Aladdin. I picked up my son's small, colored Playskool desk and slammed the lightweight plastic furniture onto the form in the bed as my wife scrambled on her hands and knees to the wall. Slamming the door behind me, I strode to the hall closet and pulled down the top shelf, scattering everything, until I found what I was looking for. The bedroom door opened, and my wife and Dad peeked out. A Lion King sheet they were holding partially hid their nakedness. Both slammed the door closed when I spun around, pointing my grandfather's Korean War-era Colt Model M1911A.45 pistol at them. In 2 steps I reached the bedroom door, and in 1 move kicked it open. And my dad were cowering against the far wall. "Randall, wait," and pleaded. "Son, you don't understand." My dad started, his forehead bleeding from the encounter with the Playskool desk. I racked the slide on the .45 pistol and pointed it at my dad. I heard a noise and looked down to see him pissing on himself. "No, Randall." "No," screamed Ann. I whipped the gun in her direction, then in my father's direction, back and forth, my mind a fog. I started to squeeze the trigger, but at the last second jerked the gun upward and a shot fired into the ceiling. No one moved as the gunshot echo faded, then a small voice stopped me cold. "Daddy, I can't sleep." Turning around, I saw my son was standing in the doorway, clutching his teddy bear. Everything froze in time, but the fog in my mind cleared. I motioned with the gun barrel at my dad and wife. "Get out," I rasped. "Take the boys, leave the house," and scrambled past me, gathering up my son as she left the room. My dad was sidling around the edge of the wall toward the door. "Son, I know this." He started before I backhanded him, the pistol barrel striking him in the face, knocking him out the door. I sat on the bed and put my head between my knees. It was very awkward at the police station. Yesterday, I was part of the law enforcement fraternity. While not an officer, I had put myself on the line, and many of the real, undercover cops had given what I thought were overblown exaggerations of my exploits to help them in Operation Great White. Also, there was the fact the county lockup was overcrowded with arrests from the raids. I was dead meat if they put me anywhere near the current holding cells. I was placed in a room normally used to hold low-risk juveniles with a bed and even a TV. The next morning, the sheriff brought me a takeout meal and more bad news. "Randall, I don't know what to say, so I will give it to you straight. It looks bad. Your wife has obtained a restraining order against you. Some wet behind the ears say, who doesn't understand, filed a bunch of charges already." He rubbed his neck. "The paperwork seems to have been, misplaced for the time being." I looked at him, but said nothing. "Randall, your wife is in my office now." I snorted as he continued. "If I let her in here, you promise to behave?" "I mean, I got to be here, but I will stand over there in the corner and let you two have your say." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate all you're doing, but there is not much to say. But I guess I do not have a lot of control now over what you're going to do, right?" The sheriff cracked a smile. "Well, it is my jail." He walked over and banged on the door twice. We sat in silence for a few minutes until a deputy opened the door and my wife and stepped in. The sheriff stood up, offering in his chair as he moved to the far corner of the room behind her, and looked a mess as she tentatively sat on the offered chair about a yard from me. "Randall, I do not know what to say. How about, I have restraining order against you, so even though you have not seen your sons for 8 months, I can't see them anymore because I want to screw your old man." I saw the sheriff's eyes open wide at my statement and then pulled a tissue from her purse. "It was not like that, Randall. Your dad is in the hospital, you know. After the event at the house, he had chest pains and they called an ambulance. I do not give a shit where your stupid buddy is at. All I care about is where are my children now. They're at the house. A friend is staying with them. Another one of your relatives? How deliverance of you. Is this some first cousin you were screwing, or an uncle? She is a friend from work, and not related." I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't know you swung both ways, but I guess there is a lot I didn't know." "Randall, stop this. It is not helping." "Oh, I am sorry, and at my first time dealing with incest, not to mention a cheating wife, and having my children kept from me. I'll need your guidance in this area. Your father and I are not blood related. I will get the restraining order dropped. I told the ASA I'll refuse to testify against you about anything. I was scared. You pointed a gun at me. My apologies, and I was unsure of the rules of etiquette when you come across your wife screwing her father-in-law. Randall, you must let me explain. I know you have it in you to forgive me. I swear to God nothing like this will ever happen again." Now I was starting to get pissed. "And even the devil believes in God. Why should I want to forgive you or believe you? Because we belong together. You can search the far corners of the globe and never find a mate like me. Well, thank God the world is round, so your inbred ass can stay in some skanky dark corner where you belong. What else you got? I can't imagine how upset you were, Randall, so I will give you some time to digest all this. But please understand it was never planned. I just missed you so much. I was so lonely, and your dad suddenly became nice to me. It was like he was a different person when he found out you were working undercover. He was busting his buttons trying to keep the secret." She wiped her eyes. "We would sit around the table after the twins had gone to bed a lot of evenings. He had his beer and me with a few glasses of wine. Please do not go with the booze made me do it. I won't insult you by saying that. It is just your dad. He is not my dad anymore." And looked at me shocked before continuing. "Well, he started talking about your mom and the good times they had. This made me miss you even more. One night we were trading funny, blue stories like the time the kids almost caught us having sex in the shower. He told some torrid stories about your mom back in their younger days. Suddenly he got so sad. And you know how I am after a few glasses of wine next thing you know." I held up my hand to stop her. "Sheriff," I said, looking at him, Can I borrow 2 of your pins, please? The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. Why do you want 2 of my pins? So, I can poke my eardrums out before this, which starts giving me details about screwing my mom's husband. Ann's face got beet red. I was not going to go into details, Randall. I just wanted to say how it started and how aghast I was in the morning, give you some context. Great, I said, throwing my hands up. Screw him once, screw him every day. What's the difference, right? Now Ann started to get upset. It was not like that. I stayed away from him, even considered asking him to move back to his house. But that would have just hurt the twins. They were already acting out because you were gone. Then 2 weeks later, I was having a real shitty day. I had not heard from you in a week. I was depressed. Work was terrible, and the twins were acting their age. Everything was just a mess. I broke down crying that evening, and you're duh. He was just so understanding. It wasn't for the sex, it was for the I don't know, comfort. I couldn't sit still any longer and popped up. The sheriff took a step, but I did not move toward and comfort? You were screwing him for comfort? What? And there was no cookie dough ice cream in the house. I sat back down. And the night of my triumphant return? Was that the final big bang? One more screw for old time's sake. And at least looked embarrassed. That was a mistake. She saw my face and backtracked. They were all mistakes, but that last one was the most stupid. I was so happy and horny you were back. Plus, I really had a lot to drink. You're duh. He talked me into it one last time, just for closure, he said. He would not let me leave the room, kept pestering me. You were passed out on the sofa downstairs. My booze mind told me one more time would not matter. So, and for the first time in 8 months, I was going to get to make love to my wife, but you were going to give me his sloppy seconds? God, I think I am going to hurl. Tears started to form in Ann's eyes. I swear that is not what I was thinking. I was not even thinking that far ahead. At most, I thought you were out for the count and I could bathe later. Be all fresh and ready for you in the morning. We would make a whole day catching up. I took a deep breath. And you do know this means divorce. I cannot live with what you did to me. I know it is going to be tough on the kids, but I cannot live with you after that. I may not be some He-Man Rambo, but I do have some self-respect. She turned toward me. Randall, do you just want me to just crawl into a hole someplace? Is that it? Go away and suffer a slow and painful death. No, Ann. I replied. I do not wish you a slow and painful death, something quick, perhaps like an airplane crash. There was shock in her face. I already have a suit picked out for your funeral. However, if you want me to speak at the burial, don't expect any kind words at your parting. This time, Ann jumped up and ran to the exit. The sheriff pounded twice, and she escaped when the deputy opened the door. I was held for another day, as no one knew what to do with me. I alternated between depression and resignation. A steady stream of cops, both undercover and otherwise I had worked with, stopped in to commiserate. Most all had been divorced at least once. I guess it goes with the territory. Few had kind words about their ex-wives, and I heard plenty of horror stories about divorce court. I guess their advice can best be summed up as bitches be crazy. On the third day, I was escorted by 2 men who had government written all over them to a huge suite in the downtown hotel. I was surprised to see in the middle of the suite, taking on a cell phone in front of window overlooking the city T-Bone, the federal district attorney that was oversaw Operation Great White, and was overseeing the federal court case against a lot of the major players. He waved me to a plush chair, where a silver coffee service was laid out. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when T-Bone ended his call and took a seat across from me. What the hell is this Jerry Springer shit you got going on? I did not need this kind of sideshow screwing up the biggest case in my career. T-Bone may be a federal attorney, but I was past caring. What was he going to do? Throw me in jail? Take my kids away from me? Gee, T-Bone, I am sorry my wife having an affair and screwing my own father is interfering with your political career. I will ask the 304 to take more care with her partners in the future so as to not inconvenience you. T-Bone got a shocked look on his face, then broke into a laugh. You do got a big set of balls on you, don't you? He picked up a coffee cup. But I should have known that after reading the reports of some of the stuff you pulled during this operation. I kept drinking my coffee. We need this to go away, Randall. I leaned pretty heavy on the state attorney to withhold the charges that Dipwad's office had pending. That office has a major federal grant in the pipe, and he does not want me holding it up. There is a lot of heavy lifting coming up, and I need you as one of my star witnesses to have his head in the game. What do I need to do to make you happy? Easy. First, I want to see my kids, like yesterday. T-Bone nodded as he tapped something on a PC table. And get me a divorce from that inborn slut of a wife. Whoa, Randall. You sure you want to get rid of the women over a little bedroom antics? I looked at him like he was crazy. T-Bone, that women, and screwed my own father in my son's bedroom. T-Bone just shrugged. So? My dad has a string of mistresses around the world. My mom is screwing every pool boy and tennis pro of legal age. They are going to be married 30 years next June. The important thing is they are there for each other when it is needed. Marriage is all about appearances and what your spouse can do for you. It's not the Middle Ages. You don't own each other's bodies. I shook my head. Maybe in your crowd, but I take forsaking all others seriously. T-Bone leaned back. What about till death do us part, or for better or worse, you recall those portions of your marriage contract? I put down my cup. Well, I don't want you to kill her. T-Bone slapped me on the shoulder and laughed. You would have made a good lawyer, always looking for the loopholes. Let me set up a meeting and see what I can do. T-Bone was true to his word about getting me to see my kids, even if and was not, as the restraining order was still in place. However, having U.S. federal marshals pick up and watch over the children while they were visiting me reinforced her objections of the danger I would pose. I was still barred from my house, but T-Bone took care of that too. Randall, this 3-bedroom suite is all yours. Order anything you want from clothes to a bunch of call girls. As we like to say in government service, nothing is too good when it's someone else's money. I looked around the huge suite. Thanks T-Bone, but I do not need 3 bedrooms. T-Bone waved his hand. Well, 2 of the bedrooms are for the U.S. Marshals keeping you company. You pissed off some mighty violent people. I need to keep you safe. This would not have anything to do with keeping me away from and out of jail, would it? T-Bone gave me what looked like a campaign smile. Now you see the big picture, you understand. We aren't dealing with the Planet of Apes here. Just let me try to take care of it, okay? A week later, we were seated in a massive conference room at some law office T-Bone was pals with, and tried to sit next to me, but I got up and moved to the other side of the table. T-Bone looked irritated at my maneuver. Okay, can we stop the musical chairs now? T-Bone said, clapping his hands. The purpose of this little get-together is how do we make all parties involved whole? And spoke up. I never wanted any of this. I just want Randall to come home and forget everything so we can start over, pretend it never happened. Randall, T-Bone said, and all eyes turned to me. Not going to happen. That is like saying if dinosaurs had spaceships they would still be around today. And looked at me. Don't start. There is hope for us still. Hope is a sign of foolishness. My life is over here. I cannot stay in this town any longer. I have to quit my job, move, start over. T-Bone tapped the table. Well, good. Finally some place I can help you both out here. Randall, and I can have you placed in WITSEC, the Witness Security Program run by the U.S. Marshals, more commonly known as the Witness Protection Program. You both get new identities, jobs, a complete clean slate. Like one big do-over. And was having none of that. I am not uprooting my whole family. I have lived in this place my entire life. All my friends are here, my hairdresser, my OBGYN. I just can't pack up and start over. T-Bone did his best and tried to allay his fears. I assure you there are many fine stylists and competent medical professionals in other parts of the county. The U.S. Marshals have a great program to get you set up, complete with everything from dentist to daycare. Everything will be okay in the end. And what if it's not okay? And said, crossing her arms. T-Bone shrugged. Then it is not the end yet. T-Bone's cell phone rang. He looked at the number and scowled. Excuse me, I need to take this. And he walked to a corner of the room turning his back. And looked at me. Randall, we need to end this charade. I admit I screwed up big time. But you need to take some responsibility too. If you had been thinking of your family and not gone off playing Sir Pico, we would never be in this mess. And held up her hand when I tried to speak. And yes, Randall, I accept the major part of the fault for what happened. But look at you, all you can think of is yourself. The hospital called, your dad is asking for you. Have you even seen him? Yes, and I see you and him screwing in my son's room on the Aladdin bedspread every time I close my eyes. I may never watch another Disney cartoon ever again. And gritted her teeth. I know I made a mistake, but I am only human. I have given you time to get over it. Now it is time to pull up your big boy pants and let us get on with our life. So that's your solution? You pulled down your big girl pants to screw your kid's grandfather, and I need to get over it? I didn't say it would be easy. Go do what you have to do to make it right in your mind. Go screw a bunch of women if you think it would make us even. So I can give your sister a call? Anne's face registered shock. You wouldn't. I knew I had gotten to her now. Anne's sister was the complete opposite of Anne. A tall, sexy, curvy babe and a megawatt smile with an outgoing personality to match that had guys buzzing around her since puberty. The family joke was and had got the brains and her sister the beauty, and was extremely insecure when it came to her sister. Sure, and why not? She always liked me. That was kinda true, in reality, and sister like all guys and was always up for a good time. My sister is off limits. And stuttered. What? You want me to screw your mother? You're sick. She is old enough to be your mother. Really? You banged a guy, many times I may add, that was old enough to be your kid's grandfather. It was not that often, Randall. Don't make it more than it was. And the only place screwing your relatives kind of behavior is normal is on the Jerry Springer show. I said I was sorry. What more do you want? I want to divorce your inbred, white trash, trailer park, hillbilly, 304 bum. God damn it, Randall. I am the mother of your children, not any of those things. Really? What do you call it when someone screws their relatives? A mistake. A single stupid error in judgment, never to be repeated. I am not going to wait forever, Randall, and I am not going to pay for it for the rest of my life because your ego can't take a little hit. You divorce me, and I will do everything in my power to keep your kids from you. I don't care who your big shot friends are. She pointed at T-Bone talking in the corner. It will be like sandpaper. I will use every means to wear you down. Just then T-Bone ended his phone call and walked back to the table. Flashing his vote-getting smile, he asked, Okay, now where were we? The next few months had me wishing for my boring life back. The days were filled with depositions with the armies of law firms the defendants from Operation Great White had snagged. The evenings were debriefings and going over reams of reports and transcripts from Operation Great White. I felt like the Great White dope forever getting involved in the whole mess. The only bright spot was getting to see my boys. They were always thrilled to be with me. T-Bone spared none of the taxpayers' expense to make sure the twins and I had a good time together. However, in the divorce proceedings, T-Bone's influence ran out. Sorry, Randall, T-Bone said. The judge assigned to your case is a cranky old bastard a year from mandatory retirement. Plus, the old goat has a hard-on for the federal government. So if I try some backdoor stuff, it may do you more harm than good. He tried to cheer me up. I got 2 guys trailing your wife in. She refused federal protection, but that does not mean we cannot keep an eye on her for the sake of your children's safety. Naturally, any bad behavior they observe can be used in a court of law. You get anything? T-Bone signed. No, not really. Your wife and is drinking a bit more than usual, and I had your sheriff set up a random traffic stop on her route home from work. She was within the legal limit, but just barely. I was thinking about the whole mess I was in. It is just so unfair. I said. T-Bone thought I was talking about his tactics. Randall, any time you find yourself in a fair fight, you have planned very poorly. Early one Sunday morning, 2 federal marshals rushed into my room and roused me out bed. Hurry. Get up. We gotta go now. I am not a morning person, so everything was a blur to me. When I woke up fully, I found myself in the basement of the courthouse. The room was filled with a dozen people, marshals, sheriffs, feds, but everyone seemed to defer to an older gentleman sitting at some type of table with a secretary next to him. I was stunned when a door opened and T-Bone, followed by my wife, and who appeared to be hungover, were escorted into the room, and looked bewildered, as was I, when she was placed in a chair. There was a hush in the room as T-Bone approached the older man at the desk. The U.S. Marshal next to me whispered, That's the federal magistrate for this district. T-Bone started speaking in a clear voice. Your Honor, we have requested this emergency hearing to have an immediate order of protection placed for the wards of one of my witnesses in an ongoing federal case. T-Bone pivoted and pointed at, and I request that we have that woman's children removed from her domicile immediately, as she has placed these minors, the federal government's key witness children, in grave danger and harm's way, and jumped out of her chair. I have never done anything to hurt my babies, and I never will. One of the U.S. Marshal put her hand on his shoulder and forced her back into the chair. T-Bone continued as if and had never spoken. We are dealing with some violent elements in this case, and I was fearful of witness tampering and outside forces trying to coerce our case. The lady there, he pointed at, and refused offered protection, but I had resources assigned to her discreetly for her own safety. T-Bone then passed some papers to federal magistrate. I also had one of the legal owners of the house give permission to install surveillance inside the domicile for security, an astute precaution as it turned out. T-Bone nodded at a man who started a video being displayed on a 70-inch screen. The video showed the inside of my house. An obviously drunk and staggered in the door with a grungy-looking biker guy. When he turned, I recognized him. It was Chatterbox, the damn guy I had met from the outlaw biker gang that had started this whole mess. T-Bone kept up a running commentary about Chatterbox's criminal history, outstanding wants and warrants, and how he had met and that night and their interaction. I was listening with half an ear as I watched them proceed up the stairs as the video switched to a camera in the bedroom. Mercifully, T-Bone fast-forwarded through Chatterbox and sexual escapades, although watching them go through the motions of screwing at 30x speed did have some comic appeal, especially when and was sucking him, trying to get Chatterbox up for the third time. T-Bone resumed normal speed when it appeared and had fallen asleep, exhausted from her exertions. Chatterbox jumped off the bed and raced down the stairs. He opened the front door and a host of bikers raced in, ransacking the house, opening every drawer and shelf. I rose out of my chair when I saw one of the bikers open my son's bedroom door. The marshal next to me whispered, "Don't worry, we were watching the whole time." There was a heavily armed SRT unit at both doors waiting to burst in if needed. My mind came back to T-Bone speaking as his guests exited the house on the video monitor. "Your Honor, the SRT team was able to apprehend the men you saw in that video. All were armed, and all had a history of violent crime. It is only good fortune that no one was injured," and started crying, sobbing into her hands. T-Bone continued talking. "The children have temporarily been relocated into a safe environment at a federal facility, and I request they be placed with their father, and later in Witsec for their own protection," and jumped out of her chair, shaking off a marshal's attempt to restrain her. "You cannot take my children, goddamn you." The federal magistrate looked up and was bear-hugged by a man in a sheriff deputy outfit. "Ma'am, from what I have seen on video and read in this report, you willingly invited a known wanted felon into your home. Thus you place the welfare of the children in jeopardy with utter disregard to the consequences of your actions." I watched him sign some papers. "I so order that the minors in question be placed in the male parent's care until such time as the authorities feel they are able to enter Witsec. Any contact with the mother is prohibited and shall be prohibited until determined by the same governing authorities, keeping the welfare of the minors as priority factor," and was still struggling with the deputy when the federal magistrate stood up. I deemed these proceedings closed and walked out. I was still stunned by this turn of events that when T-Bone came over to me, I could barely speak. "T-Bone, how did you pull that off?" "It just hit me I would get to be with my kids full time. You are the smartest man on earth." T-Bone shrugged. "Most people don't change. It was a matter of time before she did something stupid." He gave me a lopsided grin. "And for the record, any time you think you are the smartest guy in the room, it's time to find a new room. It like deja vu, the same juvenile room, same bed, same TV in the jail. Except this time I was now sitting on the chair with T-Bone behind me and was sitting on the bed. It's not over, Randall." And spat at me. "You are not taking me away from my babies. You still looking to do that sandpaper thing on me? Wear me down." And just stared at me. "The thing is that sandpaper can scratch and rip and irritate. But after all that, the item is nice and polished. The sandpaper is worthless." There was a long silence before and looked down at her hands. I didn't know how it happened. I knew I was drinking too much, but I do not want to blame the booze. I was at the gas station filling up when I came out after paying and my rear tire was flat. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I just started crying and pushed the hair out of her eyes before speaking again. That biker guy seemed to come out of nowhere. Turns out he is a cousin from my mom's side. I knew him from my aunt's wedding a long time ago. He just pushed my car off to the side and changed the tire. I was so scared, but he just kept talking. The more he talked, the more at ease I felt. When he put his arm around me, I did not stop him. It just felt so nice to finally have someone understand what I was going through. And brought her head up to look at me. He declined the money I offered him, but said he would buy me a drink. Claimed I was in no shape to drive home. Said a drink would calm me down. At first it was fun, sitting in the bar swapping old stories and catching up. Next thing you know, I am being hustled out of my bed and my babies are being taken from me. And looked at T-Bone. My own government is trying to steal my children. What's the difference between you and them? Huh, what is the difference? T-Bone cleared his throat. Those people are greedy men who have no feeling or respect for anyone or anything. They will destroy anything that gets in their way to get what they want. T-Bone took a step forward before continuing. We work for the United States federal government. And took a deep breath. Randall, I swear it is all a big misunderstanding. One giant screw up. She reached out to touch my chest. I need you to think. Listen to your heart. I removed his hand from my shirt. When I hear you speak in, all I can hear are banjos, and all I can think is paddle faster, get away. I finally got my boring life back. It was a strange road that gave me a new face, along with liposuction that got rid of my belly fat faster than any exercise. In a strange way to save government money, I was thrown together with a Russian mob widow during WITSEC orientation. She had lost both her children in a car bomb attempt and was missing her children badly. As a coincidence, my children were missing a mom. It was a good fit, and somehow, I saw T-Bone's fingerprints all over that one. I now live in a small southern town by the coast near the middle of nowhere with a new name. The boys also got to pick their own names. It took a while to dissuade them that being called Iron Man was not an acceptable moniker. We keep them busy, and they now rarely ask questions about their past. T-Bone did run for governor, but lost in his first attempt. He is now an ambassador to some European country. And in Dad? Marshals notified me that Dad passed away. Anything left in his will, I had given to charity. Turns out, I was entitled to a portion of the unclaimed and seized funds from Operation Great White, not $1 zillion, but enough for a boring lifestyle. And still lives in the same town. You know how people talk in a small town, so she has not had an easy time of it. I send her pictures of the twins at Christmas through the U.S. Marshal Dead Drop. When they are 18, I will let them decide what they want to do. For now, I just want to enjoy being the dull, boring guy I was meant to be. Right now, we are planning a trip to Disneyland. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Growing up, life often threw me curveballs. My early years were a chaotic mix of struggles and fleeting joys. My family wasn't well off, and our neighborhood wasn't the safest. Despite the hardships, I learned resilience and the importance of finding small joys amidst the chaos. My childhood taught me survival and the value of genuine connections, laying the foundation for my perseverance later in life. As I entered adulthood, those lessons became even more relevant. I navigated various jobs, striving for stability and purpose. Relationships came and went, each teaching me about trust, betrayal, and self-worth. By my 30s, I had a clearer understanding of myself and my goals. Yet nothing prepared me for the whirlwind of events leading me to the brink of a new chapter in life. A scream of pain echoed in my mind. My scalp throbbed, and my skin felt like it was being pricked by needles. I tried to open one eye, but the brightness felt like a supernova, piercing my brain like a runaway freight train driven by a furious, possibly inebriated Ted Nugent. A horrible screeching sound built up, like cat nails on an endless chalkboard. "Sweet Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, anyone!" "Cthulhu," I muttered. I retched, but had nothing left to vomit. The screeching coalesced into something recognizable as a human voice. I forced my eyes open and tried to understand the blurry form above me. Shutting my eyes and reopening them, I saw a pair of feet in pink toenail polish and cotton candy slippers. Okay, a woman's feet, I thought. Probably not Leonard from Trailer 6, who sometimes liked to feel pretty when drunk. These feet were too small, lacked toe fungus, and were attached to well-formed legs without his moles or Rick Astley tattoo. The voice began making sense in Spanish, but my limited Spanish from Sesame Street didn't cover what was being said. I caught words like 32 donkeys and your grandmother, likely not an invitation to a Tupperware party. Realizing I was lying on my side in the trailer park's white gravel dust, I pushed myself to sit, dry heaving from nausea and a massive headache. The screeching stopped and the feet jumped back. I looked up to see things had worsened. Rosa Rafaela Rodriguez glared at me, clutching her pink robe and pointing accusingly. Her chihuahua stood ready to attack. Most avoided Rosa. Leonard called her the angriest woman on the planet. I avoided her since she reacted to my friendly greeting as if I tried to kidnap her. Along with court notices, lawyer bills, parole supervision fees, and utility final notices, I got an earful from her. Giving up, I turned and walked away, which only fueled her fury. Despite avoiding her, I enjoyed watching her outside in her transparent pink robe, brightening my otherwise bleak existence in our mostly abandoned trailer park. She drew herself up and launched into me again. Ignoring her, I struggled to my feet, pushing an umbrella off. She stopped, looked me over with disgust, and switched to English. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I looked down and saw I was standing in the rose bushes outside her trailer, which explained the pain. More troubling, I was unclothed and painted green, white, and red. A small crowd, including Leonard in overalls, Maisie looking like Danny DeVito in drag, and Delbert and Tawny in matching sweats with 5 o'clock shadows, watched with amusement. I grabbed an umbrella to cover myself, sending Rosa's chihuahua into a barking frenzy. "You scared my little Liam," Rosa snapped, picking up the dog. I shook my head, regretting it immediately. "Liam? Who names a chihuahua Liam?" "She likes Liam Hemsworth," Maisie chimed in, fanning herself. "I prefer Chris Hemsworth, but I wouldn't kick Liam out of bed for eating cookies, if you know what I mean," Maisie added. Rosa's shriek made me cringe, expecting the glass to shatter. The maintenance guy who could fix windows had disappeared a while ago. Rosa, pointing at me, demanded, "You think that's funny?" "No," I replied. Chris and Liam would be horrified. Maisie huffed, folding her arms. "Not what I meant. You," she clarified. Rosa launched into another Spanish tirade, likely not a history lesson. Her robe fell open, revealing she wore nothing underneath. The chihuahua pawed at her, pulling the robe further open, showing off a well-groomed heart shape. "Never seen a naked woman before," Rosa snapped. "Not many built like you. I love the heart," I replied. She closed her robe, annoyed. "Clean your vomit out of my rose bushes, a-hole." I looked down at the mess. "I'll get to it this afternoon." "Yeah, right," Rosa replied, disbelieving. "You stole my heart," I said, nodding at her robe flapping open. She tried to close it, exposing a nipple before covering up again. "What?" she questioned. "Nothing. I'm staying until the show is over," I said. She growled and stormed off, her robe flying up to reveal her bare bum. The crowd dispersed, leaving Leonard, Maisie, and me. "That's quite a woman," Leonard muttered, scratching himself. "For God's sake, Leonard, she's half your age," Maisie said. "Yeah, she is," Leonard grinned. "Pervert," Maisie retorted. "Yep," Leonard agreed, still looking where Rosa had disappeared. "Hey, Maisie," I called, still watching where Rosa had disappeared. "Joseph, is it Sunday?" "It's Sunday," Maisie confirmed. "Good. Then I'm not late for work," I said. Maisie looked puzzled. "What does Mexicano honorario mean?" "Honorary Mexican," I replied, seeing the letters written on my chest. "I'm going to kill Miguel." Dragging myself to my trailer, I retrieved my key from under a flower pot. Inside, my furniture consisted of 2 lawn chairs, a thrift shop radio, and a milk crate. I put on some shorts and fetched several buckets of water for Rosa's garden, not wanting to ask to use her hydrant. I spent the rest of the day fighting my hangover with gallons of water and Tylenol, setting my alarm before passing out. I was at the gate before sunrise when Miguel pulled up in the old school bus. "Hey, Jose," he grinned. "It's Joseph, you a-hole," I corrected him. "It's Jose now. We made you an honorary Mexican, remember?" Miguel reminded me. "Yeah, I saw the label. You didn't need to use a permanent marker. I think my blood was replaced with tequila," I said. "And mezcal," Miguel nodded. "You left me at the gate naked," I accused him. "You had a sombrero," he said smugly. I glared as I sat behind him. "I woke up in Rosa's garden." "Is that a metaphor?" "'Cause I bet her rose garden is amazing," Miguel joked. "No, idiot. I threw up on her actual roses," I clarified. "Lucky you're alive. She has a crazy temper. Her ex-husband cheated, and she stabbed both him and his mistress. She's dangerous," Miguel explained. "Why'd you do that to me?" I asked, still annoyed. "Honor. You're the first gringo crew boss who doesn't think we'll steal everything," he answered. "We're harvesting tomatoes. What is there to steal?" I questioned. "It's pronounced Jesus. We like your common sense. It's rare," Miguel said. Though I was technically the crew boss, Miguel ran everything. I just stayed out of the way and picked tomatoes with the others. "You could be the boss, you know," Miguel suggested. "No way. I need you to take the blame if anything goes missing," I replied. He repeated this in Spanish to the crew, making them laugh all the way to the fields. 3 hours into our 14-hour day, my parole officer showed up. "Joseph, just checking in to make sure you made it to work," Pio Heinen sneered. "I'm here," I replied. "It's a miracle. You know the difference between a parolee and an inmate?" "Just one mess up and you're a big mess," Pio said. "I'm meeting my parole conditions. I'm working, I'm clean, and I'm not involved in anything," I responded. "You've had 3 jobs in 6 months. Now you're working with a bunch of wetbacks," he said, glancing at Miguel, who pretended not to understand English. "You'll never make another 18 months. "I lost those jobs because you interfered," I accused. "They needed to know what kind of loser they'd hired," he sneered. "Time for a pill test. You have 2 hours to get to the center." "I don't have a car, and it's almost 2 hours away," I explained. "You know the deal. You fail or miss it, you're back inside." He chuckled and left. Miguel walked up beside me. "Sure you're not Mexican, Jose?" Miguel asked. "Pretty sure. Unless Mom was with the gardener," I joked. "You might want to ask, just to be sure," Miguel suggested. "Why?" I inquired. Because that man wants you on the other side of a wall, he said, staring after Pio's car. Jesus. You're pronouncing it wrong. Remember, you're Mexican now, I said. Alejandro will drive you to the test center. I don't have time to train a new crew boss, Miguel stated. We arrived at the test center with 15 minutes to spare. I had to pry my hands off the seat, not knowing you could drift a bus in heavy traffic. On the way back, Alejandro chatted a lot, but he didn't speak English. My Spanish was limited to counting, naming colors, and some obscenities, so we didn't get far. At dinner, Miguel sat next to me. Saturday night, you started to tell me how you ended up here but passed out before explaining how a big-shot stockbroker ended up picking tomatoes. Not much to tell. An SEC investigation hit my firm. I didn't think it involved me, but I was locked out. Turns out, there was insider trading under a fake account I had access to. I got blamed, but they couldn't prove it, so they pulled my Series 7 license, I explained. You still ended up in jail, Miguel noted. Yeah, they found cocaine in my car during the investigation. It wasn't mine, but I couldn't prove it. They used it to pressure me about the missing money. Tens of millions. I got 3 years, but only served 6 months in county jail due to overcrowding, I continued. You sure you didn't take the money? If you did, I have a cousin, Miguel suggested. If I had millions, I'd be in Mexico by now, I replied. So where'd the pills come from? He asked. I thought they were planted, but I picked up high-end clients from the airport a lot. One could have left it. Bad luck. Everything fell apart. My wife stuck around until I was sentenced, then divorced me, taking our savings, I said. What a witch, Miguel commented. I wasn't totally numb to it, but I had enough cheap tequila to take the edge off. She works at the same company, so she's lucky she didn't get fired. That job means a lot to her, I explained. True love conquers all, huh? Miguel said sarcastically. True love doesn't pay the bills, I replied. What were you making? Miguel inquired. With bonuses, almost $500,000 a year. Now I'm barely over minimum wage. She took everything, I said. Couldn't you find it? He asked. She's an accountant, and they're good at hiding money. It'd take money, time, and lawyers to dig it out, and I don't have any of those. Maybe someday I can look into it and sue for my share, I responded. Miguel shook his head sadly. I've seen your paycheck. It's going to be a while. Against my better judgment, I let Miguel talk me into going to another bar on Saturday night. You need to get out, Jose. Have some fun, Miguel urged. Like last week, where I wished I could die on Sunday? I retorted. Despite arguing, I climbed into the back seat. 8 guys could fit in the old brown Bonneville as long as no one worried about seatbelts. We're going somewhere more fun this time, Miguel promised. I thought that was your favorite bar, I said. They didn't appreciate us enough, he replied. Did we get thrown out? I asked. Maybe, Miguel admitted. Didn't your cousin own that place? I questioned. Distant cousin, he grinned. Besides, this club has dancing. When we arrived at the parking lot, I glanced at him. A salsa club? Isn't that Cuban? I asked. This place has hot chicks wearing very little. I'd come here if it was a waltz club, he replied. You do know how to dance, right? I inquired. Yes, I can do the polka and the waltz, I said. Seriously? Miguel asked, surprised. I can also tango, foxtrot, salsa, jive, and more. Beth and I used to hit dance clubs religiously, I elaborated. Thank God, I thought we were getting thrown out again, he said, relieved. I laughed. I'll buy your first beer. Domestic, Miguel requested. Yeah, I know. I've seen your paycheck, I responded. We had a blast. The club had 2 bachelorette parties and 3 divorce parties, making the ratio of women to men over 2 to 1. Most women were already tipsy when we arrived. I was dragged onto the floor by 2 divorcees, a maid of honor, 3 bridesmaids, and one mother of the bride who copped a feel so fast I hadn't finished my drink. I finally sat down, watching Miguel get dragged off by the mother of the bride. Holding my Modelo Especial, I scanned the packed floor, filled with more bare skin than a nudist colony. I spotted a woman with a full, toothsome behind and skin-tight jeans. She was talking to someone at a table, bent over to hear in the pandemonium. Every time she moved, my heart, among other things, moved with her. Damn, that was one fine bum. I was still entranced when Miguel stumbled to our table and sat next to me. Yokuda warned me, a-hole, Miguel said. Yeah, she was a handful. That cougar got my zipper down. She mentioned she was divorced like 6 times, he replied, pausing to follow my gaze. Damn, that's some fine... He stopped as the woman straightened and looked at us. Rosa's eyes narrowed as she approached. Miguel raised his hands. Hey man, I just got here, he said loudly enough for Rosa to hear. She ignored him and came right up to me. What do you think you're staring at, you pervert? Rosa demanded. I was about to apologize when a giggling woman in a toy bridal veil fell into the table, dragged by her maid of honor. The maid of honor, with a pink sash, grabbed my arm. She needs to dance with 5 more guys, the maid of honor insisted. I was pulled to my feet and gestured helplessly to Rosa. I'll be back. The bride, less drunk than her bridesmaid, seemed uncomfortable with the game. I tried to be a gentleman. I didn't make it back to the table for 3 more dances, intercepted by another bride, another maid of honor, and a very pretty trans woman who saved me from the cougar. At least dancing with her wasn't like dancing with an aroused octopus. I was heading back to the table when a hand grabbed mine, pulling me back onto the dance floor. Were you ever coming back to your table? Rosa glared at me as we started to dance. She seemed less angry than before. I tried. I had a cold beer back there, but it's probably warm by now, I said. No, I drank it. I was waiting for you to come back and apologize, Rosa responded. Any inclination to apologize vanished. Nonsense. If you didn't want people staring at your bum, you wouldn't paint those jeans on and bend over like that. Rosa's lips tightened, eyes narrowing. That wasn't for your benefit, pervert. I shrugged. I didn't see a reserved sign on it, and I looked pretty close. I expected her to explode, but she chuckled and shook her head. Miguel says you're not as much of an a-hole as I thought. He said it was his fault. They didn't tie me down and force me to drink, I said, trying to remember. At least I don't think they did, but he could have not painted me and dropped me off unclothed. She smiled. I didn't expect you to actually come back and clean up the vomit. I wish you'd told me that. Dragging those buckets around with a hangover was awful. The dance with Rosa was pleasant, and I felt we had a truce, at least for now. I watched her walk back to her table, enjoying the view. She glanced back, smiled, and mouthed pervert at me. I winked, and she rolled her eyes before sitting down. Miguel looked me over for injuries. Looks like you got away alive. She's your cousin, I said. Yeah, second cousin, Miguel replied. Thanks for putting in a good word, I said. Kinda owed you that, Miguel admitted. Man, you did. A-hole, I said. I managed a week without any mayhem, which was a record. 1 call to my PO, 6 days of work, and no hangover for 2 Sundays in a row. Life was good, so of course it couldn't last. We finished a field early and were heading back before sunset. Hey, Jose, isn't that your parole officer with the blonde woman in that restaurant? Miguel asked. Yeah, that's... I froze. What? Miguel pulled away from the stoplight. That's my ex-wife, I said, noticing Beth's blouse was unbuttoned an awful lot for a friendly lunch. What's she doing with that a-hole? Miguel glanced at me, then focused on the road. Hold on. He stopped the bus, yelled in Spanish to the back, and a bearded guy moved to the front. Miguel opened the door as I started to get up. No, you stay here, Miguel instructed. I need to know what's going on, I protested. Exactly, but you're still pronouncing it wrong. This is Jesus, and he knows your parole officer. We have a cousin who works there. Maybe we'll get lucky and find out, Miguel said. I wanted to say it was a coincidence, but what were the odds of my ex-wife accidentally meeting my low-life parole officer? I sighed, thinking maybe she was checking up on me. Miguel raised an eyebrow at me. Maybe, but it feels messed up. We rolled out, and Miguel glanced at me in the mirror. I'll come by tonight and let you know what Jesus finds out. I nodded, feeling sick. Jesus didn't find out much, but what he did learn was unsettling. One of the waitresses, a cousin, had noticed Beth all over Fish, who seemed very nervous. She was trying to get him to do something, using seduction. Jesus said if her blouse unbuttoned anymore, she'd need to start on her skirt. Maybe she wants him to go easy on me, I said, though it sounded hollow. You can't be that stupid, Jose. Going easy on you wouldn't make him uncomfortable. He's cool with child aggressors and eliminators. He's got a good reputation, Miguel countered. How do you know? I asked. There aren't many POs around here. I got a cousin who... Miguel started. I waved him off. I have a bad feeling about this. Miguel stared at my peeling linoleum tabletop. You gonna look into it? Yeah, I'll just pull a few grand out of my account for a private eye. I shook my head. I can't afford that. Do private eyes even exist anymore? Miguel grinned. You don't need to. I got a cousin who works in housekeeping at her condo. Jesus, Miguel, how many cousins do you have? I asked. As many as we need. We're everywhere and invisible, he replied. You don't need to do this, I said. He laughed. This is cool. Play detective. Besides, it's what friends do. We went to his cousin Isabel's house. She thought it sounded exciting and fun at first. But when she asked for a picture of Beth, she looked at it, then suddenly forgot English and started speaking rapid-fire Spanish to Miguel. "Miguel, what's going on?" I asked, sensing something was wrong. He looked pained. "Ooh, Jose." "Even I know what piota means, Miguel," I said, irritated. Isabel squared up. "She's got a couple of guys who visit all the time." "We're divorced. I may not like it, but it happens," I said, lying. I hated it. Isabel looked at me stonily. "You've been divorced for 4 years?" My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "I've worked there for 4 years, and she's had one guy coming over the whole time," Isabel revealed. I felt oddly relieved. "That can't be her. I was home every night." "They come over at lunchtime. I'm sure it's her." "Skinny bum witch," Isabel said. "Another guy started showing up 2 years ago." Miguel pulled out his phone and showed a picture of Fish. "This guy?" Miguel asked. She shook her head. "No, the new guy is a big blonde, maybe a weightlifter. The long-term guy is thin, dark-haired, jittery." "You gotta be kidding me," I said, trying to sit but ending up on the floor. "That sounds like Alan Voorhees from accounting." "Crap." Isabel looked at me sadly. "You didn't suspect?" "How could I? Her office is 5 minutes away. Mine was 40 minutes in good traffic," I explained. Miguel grabbed my shoulder. "You're not going to do something crazy, right? You'll break your parole." I shook my head. "Go after them? My martial arts training is walking into spider webs and going full kung fu theater. I can't afford a PI, and screwing around isn't illegal. There's nothing I can do." Miguel shrugged, knowing I was right. I expected Fish to show up with more demands, but he didn't. 2 weeks later, just as we were near the city limits, Miguel got a call. He cut across 3 lanes of traffic and sped back to the trailer park. He stopped directly in front of my trailer. Rosa, in her skimpy pink robe, stood cross-armed, glaring at Fish. Leonard and Maisie watched, fascinated. I barely stepped off the bus before Rosa shifted her attention to me. "Did you give this idiot permission to go into your trailer? He came in right after the bus left," Rosa demanded. "It's a condition of parole," Fish said, glaring. "You have no expectation of privacy." "Yeah, but you need reasonable suspicion. Otherwise, it's maltreatment. I read the terms. I can ask for another officer to be present," I countered. His lip twitched. "That's for female parolees who want a female officer." "It doesn't say that. It just says I can have one." I decided to drop my bomb. "What did Beth want?" His face paled. "I don't need this." He turned and walked to his car. I followed. "What's going on, Fish?" I asked. He opened the door and looked at me, visibly aged. "How would I know?" He slammed the door, started the car, then rolled down the window. "I'm transferring you to Anderson. I don't want any part of this." "Part of what, damn it?" I shouted. He flicked something out the window and stared at me. "Your ex-wife wants you back in prison. Watch your back. She'll do anything." He drove off. Leonard picked up a package from the dirt. "Oxy in 4 bags, probably 20 tabs. That'd be intent to distribute," Leonard said. Miguel shook his head silently. I closed my eyes. Rosa moved closer, her scent calming me. She watched Fish's car disappear. "He was going to plant that in your trailer?" Rosa asked. I nodded, barely able to speak. "You'd have gone back to prison?" she continued. I nodded again. "It would be to a real prison this time, with real gangs." I shivered, and Rosa grabbed my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "Not really," I admitted. "Why does your ex want you in prison? You're not stalking her, right?" Rosa asked, concerned. "I don't even have a car. Miguel drives me everywhere. How could I stalk her?" I replied, trying to focus. Somehow, Rosa holding my arm helped me focus. "Something's going on, but I don't know what. We're divorced. She got everything, and I haven't been near her." I took a deep breath and told Rosa how I ended up divorced and on parole. She looked puzzled. "She tried to screw that guy into putting you in prison?" Rosa asked incredulously. "Seems like it," I confirmed. "She must really hate you," Rosa said, shaking her head. "I didn't do anything. She was the one cheating, and I didn't even know it," I said, feeling the weight of it all. Rosa's lips twisted attractively. "You didn't have to do anything. She might blame you for her actions. Women, you know." Her big brown eyes locked on mine. "He's right. You need to watch your back. She hates you that much and isn't stopping now." I felt exhausted. The idea that Beth hated me was sickening. I looked at Miguel. "Do you have any cousins in Bergman Towers? That's where Beth works," I asked. He grinned. "What can I say, man? We're everywhere. I'll also tell Isabel to get pictures of any visitors she gets at home," Miguel said. Maisie, wearing Leonard's overalls, peered at Fish's disappearing car. Leonard and I will keep an eye on your trailer, but you should install a latch with a padlock, she suggested. I felt Rosa let go and turned to her. You called Miguel? I asked. She nodded. You saved me, I said gratefully. She looked uncertain for a second, then smirked. You spend all your time watching my bum. I figured I could watch yours for a change, she teased. Miguel rolled his eyes. Yours is a lot more interesting than his, he quipped. Rosa looked up. God, I hope so. If it isn't, I spend too much time at the gym. She winked and slapped her bum. I blinked and dragged my eyes back to hers. Where do you work anyway? I asked. Crestridge Medical Center. I'm an LPN. Pay isn't great, but the insurance is good, Rosa replied. I pretended to study her bum. And it obviously has a great gym, I commented. She smiled smugly and wiggled a little. Damn right, she said. Miguel looked at the bus. We got a field of tomatoes waiting, Jose, he reminded me. I nodded. Yeah, thanks again, Rosa. You saved me, I said. I'm glad I could help. Let me know what's going on, okay? She said. She walked away toward her trailer, letting the wind play with her robe. Wow, Maisie muttered, scratching herself through the overalls. Sop that up with a biscuit. Leonard rolled his eyes. For God's sake, she's half your age. Maisie grinned. Yeah, she is. Pervert, Leonard muttered. Yep, Maisie replied with a satisfied nod. It took Isabel 6 days to get pictures of both of Beth's regular visitors. We gathered in her living room as she showed them to us. One was Voorhees, whom I barely noticed at Beth's office. I never imagined him sneaking over and sleeping with her while I was at work. The other guy was a mystery. Big, blonde, with a crew cut, wearing a decent suit and carrying a briefcase. I didn't recognize him at all. Miguel looked at me. I shook my head. Nothing. Maybe he works for your old company, Isabel suggested, clearly enjoying her spy role. No, I've never seen him, I replied. What about at your wife's office? Isabel asked, eager to continue the investigation. I visited there a few times. I recognized Voorhees, didn't I? The brokers were in my building, but the support staff was in the headquarters, I said. Miguel looked disappointed. I have a cousin who does security there. Really? I was starting to think Miguel's family tree was enormous. He nodded, frowned, and pulled out his phone. Let me text him, he said. Seconds later, he had a response. We can drop by and he'll take a look. As we headed out, Isabel's husband spoke quietly to Miguel, who chuckled softly. Isabel's husband wants us to keep investigating, Miguel said. Why? He hasn't even been involved, I asked, puzzled. Isabel enjoys it. She's more energized when she gets home from work now, Miguel explained. Wait, so I began. Yeah, she's had a fantasy about being a detective. She even bought handcuffs and a fingerprint kit, Miguel said, grinning. Stop. I don't want to know, I interrupted. Miguel laughed. But it's really... Dear God, Miguel, just stop, or I'll tell you about Leonard and Maisie and the spatula, I warned. Ugh, that's nasty. You win, Miguel conceded. We arrived at a small apartment building. Miguel led me to the 3rd floor and knocked on a green door. A powerful red-haired giant opened it. Miguel introduced us. Jose, this is my cousin Bjorn. He manages the security team at your ex-wife's building. They hired him from the NYPD, Miguel introduced. Miguel, he doesn't look very Mexican, I said, puzzled. Yeah, well, he's Norwegian, Miguel explained. Bjorn sighed. Swedish, Miguel. Yeah, bork, 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 Swedish, Norwegian, Finnish, whatever, Miguel shrugged. Bjorn waved us in with a smile. Miguel's still mad about that FIFA match last year. Oh, not that again. You got lucky once, Miguel retorted. Bjorn looked thoughtful. Got lucky on a $100 bet? Get lucky with your sister, man, Miguel shot back. She's taller than me. She'd have to hold you by the feet and use you like a toy. How long can you hold your breath? Maybe I'll give her a call, Bjorn said, grinning. Miguel winced comically. Moron. So where's Kelsey? She's the highlight of visiting you. Bjorn handed us beers. She's stuck in traffic. Had a gig on the east side. Miguel pointed to a picture of Bjorn with a cheerful, pale woman. Kelsey's a clown. Like, a real one. Went to clown school and everything. Academy. It's Clown Academy, Bjorn corrected. She's a medical clown now, working in children's wards at hospitals. I met her in New York when she was a busker doing street magic. She got stuck there when her circus shut down. I arrested her. Seriously? I sipped my beer, intrigued. Yeah, she fought with a mime and I had to arrest them both, Bjorn said. Miguel snickered. Did you keep a straight face when you told the mime he had the right to remain silent? It took 3 tries. Then I searched Kelsey. Found a dozen balloon animals, rubber chickens, a joy buzzer, 6 giant lollipops, 2 bulb horns, and about 50 yards of handkerchiefs tied together. The last one had a red lace strip tied to it. It took 15 minutes and drew a huge crowd. She made nearly $600 in tips. Hell of a way to meet. I savored another sip. Yeah, she found me on duty a few days later, gave me her number, and demanded a date. The door opened and a cheerful clown walked in. Not creepy, but bouncy and cute. "Hey, Miguel, nacho cheese Doritos." She grinned at me. It's the only Spanish I know. Her silliness was infectious, and I laughed. She leaned over and studied me intently. "Bjorn giving you some line of nonsense about me?" she asked, raising her hands. "He tells everyone I'm a clown." "You are in clown makeup and carrying a rubber chicken," I pointed out. She held up the chicken. "Dinner. And maybe I overdid the eyeshadow this morning." She deadpanned, then grinned. "Anyway, it was only 43 handkerchiefs, not 50, and he loves the clown thing." She spun into a pirouette and slid into Bjorn's lap. "Don't you, babe?" He kissed her, and she spun out of his lap. "Be right back. Gotta get the makeup off." Bjorn watched her leave, then turned serious. The text sounded urgent. "What's up?" "Jose has a problem. Someone is trying to set him up, and he doesn't know why," Miguel explained. Bjorn eyed me. "He looks more like a Joseph than a Jose to me." "Miguel," I corrected. He tipped his bottle toward me. "I have strict instructions to keep you out of the complex, so I hope that's not the help you're looking for. What's the problem?" It took about 15 minutes to explain, and Kelsey joined us with a beer. "Sounds like a mess. Does your ex hate you that much?" she asked. I shrugged. "No reason for it, as far as I know." "What are you trying to do now?" Bjorn inquired. "We're trying to figure out who this is." Miguel showed Bjorn a picture of the blonde guy with Beth. "Seen this guy?" Bjorn nodded. "Yeah, he's been around, not as much lately. Didn't know he knew Beth. Never saw him with Voorhees either." "So who is he?" I asked. "Evan Batchelder. He tried to intimidate me when he first showed up. He's an SEC investigator," Bjorn revealed. Miguel and I were quiet on the way back to the trailer park. He stopped at the gate. "So, not all your cousins are really cousins," I remarked. He shrugged. "You have the family you're born with, and the family you choose." "And Rosa?" I asked. "She's really my second cousin. Likes you, you know," Miguel said. "Weren't you the one who said she might eliminate me?" I reminded him. Miguel grinned. "She might. Doesn't mean she doesn't like you." His grin faded. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Beth seeing the SEC guy is an ethics violation. I'd rather leave it alone," I said. "But she won't leave you alone. Don't do anything stupid. You need help. I'll help, okay?" Miguel offered. I nodded, unsure. He drove off, and I walked through the dim trailer park. "Hey, pervert," Rosa called out. I looked over at Rosa's trailer. She was sitting outside. "Hey, Rosa," I greeted her. "Bad day?" she asked. "Yeah, everything I thought I knew about my wife is nonsense," I replied. She held up a bottle. "Need a drink? Tapatio from Jalisco?" I approached. "That's the good stuff. Don't waste it on me." Rosa smiled. "I've been there with my ex. I can spare some." She patted the chair next to hers. "You promised to let me know what's going on." I slumped into the chair and took the bottle. "I don't have a cup." "Tequila eliminates germs. You won't catch my cooties," she said. I took a sip, more worried about you catching my bad luck. "So what happened?" She leaned forward. I told her the whole story. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It looks like Beth has been setting me up for years. She was with the SEC guy over a year before the investigation, and Voorhees 2 years before that. She tried to get Fish to put me back in prison," I explained. Rosa pulled her feet up into her chair. "How long were you married?" "Just over 4 years," I replied. "So she was with Voorhees practically from the beginning," Rosa noted. We sat quietly for a bit. "Think she married you to set you up?" she asked. "That thought makes me feel even worse," I admitted. She took the bottle, sipped, and handed it back. "Manipulating men is what some women do best." She looked at me. "What are you going to do? Get revenge?" I shook my head. "I just want out of this. But that won't work." Rosa held up the empty bottle, then stood up. "Maybe another bottle would help. Think it through. I think I have one inside." She walked to her door, and when she opened it, the light seemed to dissolve her robe as she looked back at me. "You coming?" she asked. I followed, entranced by the sway of her hips. She paused, and the chihuahua darted under a chair. "The bottle's in my bedroom," she said, pointing to an open door. As I stepped closer, she turned and smiled wickedly, her robe open. I pulled her against me, and she grinned wider. "I warned you. Manipulating men is what some women do best," Rosa said, hooking a leg around me. She started to speak, but I kissed her. She shrugged off her robe, and I carried her to the bedroom, the chihuahua howling from under the chair. Later, Rosa lay half across me, waking up. She smiled. "Wow, you must have been saving that up. I'm a little tender." She glanced at the floor. "I'm throwing that pillow away." "Yeah, washing won't help," I agreed. She laughed. "I'll just buy a new one." I ran my fingers through her hair. "I haven't had an active social life." "You didn't hook up with that old lady at the club," she said. "No," I replied. She laughed. "I know you didn't." "I was keeping an eye on you," I said. "Fair. I had an eye on you too," she teased. "And I lied. That stuff at the club was for your benefit." Rosa grew serious. "I need to tell you the truth. I knew you'd be at the club. That's why I went." "I'm going to eliminate Miguel," I muttered. "He didn't know. He asked for a good place, so I decided to show up," Rosa explained. "Why?" I asked. "Because I needed to stop being a witch. I've been angry since my ex-husband. I thought you might understand. Besides, I got a good look at you before you picked up that sombrero, pervert," she said. She giggled. "So you wiggled your bum at me. It worked, didn't it? You drooled over me every time I went outside." "Is that why you wear that robe?" I asked. "Sometimes. I'm an exhibitionist. You've found my weakness," she admitted, and I squeezed her bum. A knock interrupted. Rosa put on her robe and answered the door while I got dressed. Rosa looked at me, puzzled. "This girl needs to talk to you." Kelsey stepped in. "Hey, Jose, got a minute?" "Rosa gets to hear it," I said. "Okay," Kelsey sighed. "But this doesn't go to Bjorn." "Okay," I nodded. "When the circus went bankrupt, I was screwed. I started street performing in small cons like Three-Card Monte," Kelsey began. "Bjorn said you did street magic," I noted. "Toughest kind. Just you and the marks. No stage sets, no assistants." She grinned. "I was good at it." Rosa asked, "What does that have to do with everything here?" Kelsey blew out a breath. "I heard stuff about big cons and helped on a couple. Bjorn thinks he rescued me before I got in too deep, and he mostly did. I didn't do anything really bad, but being broke in the city sucks. I don't want to tarnish what he did. He doesn't deserve that." I looked at Rosa, who smiled gently and laughed softly. "I understand." Kelsey grinned at Rosa and gave an exaggerated wink before looking at me. "I think you're looking at this the wrong way." "Why?" I asked. "Because you're wondering why they're targeting you. This is just another big con, and you're not the mark." She paused. "No offense, Joseph, but you can't be the mark. You don't have anything worth taking." She glanced at Rosa. "No money or valuable stuff." "I know," I grimaced. "Then why set me up? Why try to put me back in prison?" "You're not the mark. You're part of the con. You're the distraction," Kelsey explained. I stared at her. "I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good." "It means you're the diversion. They want everyone looking at you, not them," she clarified. Rosa asked, "How do we stop it?" Kelsey grinned. "Just convince the mark they're being conned." I had a sudden realization. Damn it, I'm an idiot. "Why?" Rosa asked, puzzled. "The Seychelles. We were going to Fiji for our honeymoon, but Beth suddenly changed it to the Seychelles." "Why does that matter?" Rosa questioned. "Banking laws. She sent me deep-sea fishing one day while she stayed at the spa. I bet she set up an account in person so there'd be no trail to her," I explained. "Isn't there anyone you can call?" Rosa asked. "The SEC has a reporting mechanism, but that'd probably just tip them off," I said. I almost choked on the tequila. "Who watches the Watchmen?" Rosa smiled. "Why not both the DOJ and the FBI? The FBI and IRS have websites for reporting fraud, so I used the library computer to report it, hoping it would cause enough trouble for Beth and her cohorts to leave me alone. I reported to P.O. Anderson and worked with Miguel and the crew until the end of the harvest. Then I found a job making donuts, which was easier, but I missed the old crew. The hours matched Rosa's, and we were pretty much living together, so life was good. But it couldn't stay that easy. As I was nuzzling Rosa's neck and grabbing her bum while she set the table, a harsh knock sounded. Rosa glared at the door, trying to calm her breathing. Damn it. If Leonard's here to borrow my robe again, the answer is no. It wasn't Leonard. It was 2 deputies and a couple of guys in suits. I recognized the deputies. The older plainclothes man held up his credentials. Joseph Bateman. I nodded, seeing Leonard and Maisie peering out from Leonard's trailer. "I'm Special Agent Tanner with the FBI. We need you to come to the field office to answer a few questions. Rosa clamped onto my arm. Are you arresting him? No, we just have a few questions. I looked at Rosa. I probably need to do this. She reluctantly let me go, but not before taking cell phone pictures of the agents and whispering something in Spanish to one of the deputies. He paled, likely from a pass-away threat. As we drove away, I saw Leonard and Maisie heading to Rosa's trailer. At the FBI field office, I was put in an interview room with nauseatingly white walls, gray carpet, and a dull gray table, and told to wait. After 20 minutes, a clean-cut guy in a black suit entered, placed his credentials on the table, opened a folder, and introduced himself. Mr. Bateman, I'm Senior Special Agent Michael Rivera from the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch in D.C. We received your tip and need clarification for an ongoing FBI-IRS investigation. We appreciate your assistance. I stared in surreal horror. Miguel! Ignoring my whisper, he pointed to a line item on the list. You mentioned the money may have been moved to an account in the Seychelles. We need to narrow down which institution your ex-wife may have used. For the next 2 hours, SSA Rivera went over every detail of the suspected plot. I had to handwrite and sign statements, review maps and honeymoon itineraries, all while Rivera acted like we'd never met. Thankfully, there were no references to Isabel, Bjorn, or Kelsey. They were supposed to be family. After we finished, he gave me a perfect government official handshake and thanked me for assisting in the investigation. I walked into Rosa's trailer with silence roaring in my ears. She was waiting for me. Are you okay? She asked, concerned. Did you know about Michael? I asked. Michael who? She recoiled. Miguel. What about Miguel? Is he okay? She asked, worried. He's an FBI agent, I revealed. The shock and disbelief on Rosa's face was the most comforting thing I could have seen. Miguel? Are you serious? He told me he came out here because he had trouble in New York. Her voice trailed off, and she stood silent for a moment before launching into rapid Spanish. I was probably lucky I didn't understand. After a few minutes, I wondered if Liam would let me hide under the chair with him. Rosa, I am so sorry, I apologized. She stopped and blinked. For what? For even thinking you could have... I trailed off. She shook her head. You asked. You didn't accuse me of anything. That hijo de puta lied to us. His family. We saw the arrests and trial on TV. The FBI and IRS investigation into SEC corruption was in the news for a year. Beth took a plea deal, but still got 15 years after turning over the money she'd stashed overseas. The SEC investigator got 20 years with no plea deal. More people were involved than I thought, which made me uneasy considering Beth had drawn most of them into her plan. I was lucky I wasn't a CDC case study. Most got 5 years, though one IT guy only got 18 months. Rosa's only comment on Beth was, "You were married to that skinny witch. I thought you liked women with real bums." What can I say? I was deprived for 4 years. I'm making up for it now. She shot me a fake scowl, but the corner of her mouth twisted into a smile. I know. I can't even wear shorts. You keep leaving tooth marks all over me. She still spent most of her time off wearing just her skimpy robe. If anything, her exhibitionist streak had gotten worse. I didn't argue, though she did occasionally have a tooth mark or two. The court was looking at vacating my conviction. During the investigation, someone admitted that Voorhees had planted the pills in my car. Beth had orchestrated it. I wasn't holding my breath, though. At the speed the courts moved, I'd be done with parole before they got to it. P.O. Anderson had gone hands-off and even told me about the move to vacate. Fish retired quietly without charges, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but Rosa said she suspected he wouldn't have gone through with it. That was good enough for me. For months after Beth's sentencing, Rosa and I met Bjorn and Kelsey at the salsa club. We also ran into them at street festivals and sometimes met at the club for dinner and drinks. Dancing with a double-jointed clown was a trip, and watching Kelsey perform street magic tricks on patrons never got old. One evening, we arrived early. I grabbed a table while Rosa freshened up. I had just waved a waitress over when Miguel pulled out a chair. I'll get this round, man. I owe you one. Miguel spoke to the waitress briefly and then sat down. Miguel? Or is it Michael? I asked. He sighed. Miguel, you might want to keep a clear path to the door. Rosa's pissed at you. Yeah, I figured. You earned that doing your job. I bought it. I thought you were my friend. You're good. Lots of training. Bjorn told me he suspected something. He just didn't think FBI. He thought maybe State Narcotics Task Force, I said. I wasn't even there for you. We had an op running but came up empty. I was already in place when the employment agency dropped you there. Blind luck, Miguel explained. The FBI stalks? Low-level pill parolees? Really? What kind of crap is that? I asked, incredulous. Everyone was convinced you had the money hidden. Probably 6 agencies watching, waiting for you to run. Took me a while to suspect you weren't in on it, Miguel admitted. Why didn't you say something? I demanded. I couldn't be sure for a while. Once we learned an SEC investigator was involved, I was stuck. The rules are simple. The FBI should have investigated, but none of our evidence was legal, and the politics were complicated. We couldn't legally initiate an investigation with what we had, he said. But if somebody lodged a whistleblower complaint, you'd have probable cause, I suggested. He nodded. It worked, didn't it? We figured out why she kept targeting you after you were out. You were supposed to be the fall guy, but they didn't realize that. There wasn't enough evidence to really railroad you. So, when you got out after a few months, the SEC and IRS were on high alert. Beth couldn't touch the money without drawing attention. If I went back to prison for a long time, the pressure would be off and she'd be free and clear, I concluded. That's too cold, Miguel said, shaking his head. Yeah, I interviewed her. She's probably a full-blown sociopath. They're drawn to money and power and end up in politics, law, and finance. Cold as ice and damn good liars. Convincing as hell, I said. Kind of the pot calling the kettle black there, Miguel, I noted. He shrugged. Fair, still. You're lucky you're alive. She probably figured liquidating you would draw too much attention. She did ask about you, though, wondering why you hadn't tried to see her and talk. What the hell is there to talk about? She was never who I thought she was, I said bitterly. Miguel put his beer down. If she's like other sociopaths I've met, she wants to know she won in some way. See you break down or get upset. See your reaction when you realize you were played. He laughed. It really pissed her off when I told her you screwed up her plan, cost her all the money, and put her in prison. Pretty one-sided win there. I was just trying to stop everything, I said. I know, but it worked for me. Sociopaths are usually narcissists. She tried to show how she won by explaining stuff we didn't know, put 2 more a-holes behind bars, and recovered a bit more money, Miguel concluded. Rosa suddenly appeared by the table, glaring at Miguel. She hissed something, and he raised his hands in surrender. I know. My mom relayed your, opinion to me. I'll never hear the end of it, so thanks, Miguel said. Rosa glanced between us. I shrugged. He's explaining what happened. She pulled a chair next to mine, gripping my arm possessively and still glaring at Miguel. He took a sip of his beer. What else do you want to know? I asked. How many people were involved? Are you sure you want to know? Miguel asked, frowning. 10, but 2 were women. 11 if you count the IT geek who botched the frame job on you. He only got a few blowjobs in the server room. He rolled on everyone as soon as we pressured him. He got 18 months, Miguel explained. 18 months in prison for a few blowjobs. Damn, I shook my head. Rosa elbowed me with a grin. Mine aren't worth that. Of course they are, I replied. Oh God, too much information. Miguel held his hands up as Rosa laughed wickedly. Things got quiet, the joking reminding us of how close we'd been. I turned my beer bottle a few times. What do you want, Miguel? I asked. I wanted to set things right. Family, you know, he said. I had bitter replies in my head, but let them go. Are we Jose and Miguel? Yeah, cousins. Michael and Joseph, not so much, Miguel replied. I looked at Rosa. I think I can live with that. She studied him. You ever do that again, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Her tone was certain, not venomous. He nodded. I know, and I deserve it. Thanks for giving me a chance to make things right. Rosa nodded, mollified by his apology. He finished his beer. I need to apologize to Isabel. I talked to Bjorn and Kelsey. That's how I knew you'd be here. Bjorn understands, but Kelsey will take a while. She doesn't trust easily, but when she does, it's wholehearted. I messed that up. I nodded. Despite Kelsey's street smarts, she had a precious naivete that Rosa loved. He stood up, pulled an envelope from his back pocket, and smiled. With a bit of irony, I asked if I could deliver this personally. What is it? I asked, wary. The adjudication on the IRS reward money for reporting tax evasion. It's not a fortune, but it should help. It's a percentage of the taxes owed on underreported income minus taxes and other deductions. But it'll help you get back on your feet, he said. He paused. If they vacate your conviction, will you go back to your job? I shook my head. No, there will always be suspicion. No one would sponsor me for a Series 7 again. The donut shop owner is thinking about selling. I'm managing it now and looking into bank loans. It's affordable, and the profits are good. Miguel snickered. A big shot donut shop owner. Jesus, you're saying it wrong. He works at the shop. I hired him and Alejandro, I corrected. Still hard to picture, Miguel said. Money is just money, Miguel. I have family now, I said. I saw a flash of pain before he walked away. I opened the envelope and sorted the papers. The total was over $500,000. I showed it to Rosa. She smiled. No problem buying the donut shop now, and we can get you a nicer engagement ring. She studied her quarter-carat ring. No, I'm keeping this one. You worked hard to save up for it. That means a lot more. I squeezed her thigh. What are we going to do with the money left over after buying the shop? She looked up. There are a lot of empty lots in the trailer park. Maybe we could get a double-wide trailer with a big deck to have everyone over, like Leonard and Maisie. Maybe even Miguel in a month or two. She looked at the door. I nodded. With a barbecue grill, patio furniture, and a good stereo system, that sounds about right. Rosa leaned against me. Maybe we could make one of the bedrooms a nursery, in the future. Her voice was measured, but I heard her uncertainty. Maybe not too far in the future, okay? Maybe get a 4-bedroom one. You never know, I said, trying to reassure her. Rosa sighed. Maybe I'll be the one leaving tooth marks on your bum tonight, she teased. Pervert, I said, and she giggled. You better believe it, Rosa replied.